Okay, this is our continuation of the committee budget-related hearing that started on Monday, August 19th. And tonight, we'll be hearing from Planning and Transportation, Public Works, and then we'll have some opportunity for final council comment on the budget hearings, these committee budget hearings. And so we're ready to start off with Ms. Porter from Planning and Transportation.
I am ready. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for having us here today to present the 2020 budget request for the Department of Planning and Transportation. I'm Terry Porter. I'm the director, and I would like to introduce other members of my team, the best team in the world as far as I'm concerned. Scott Robinson, the assistant director, Jackie Scanlon, our development services manager, Beth Rosenbarger, our planning services manager, Roy Ayton, our interim project engineer, and Pat Martin, senior transportation manager for the MPO. It's also here this evening, so thank you. Let us begin. So the Planning and Transportation Department guides the form and function of the built environment and land uses with the natural environment in order to sustain Bloomington's high quality of life. The department is responsible for the preparation, update, and implementation of the comprehensive plan, the administration, maintenance of local zoning, development, and traffic regulation codes, the planning, design, and implementation of local multimodal infrastructure projects, and the review and issuing of permits. In short, the Planning and Transportation Department is responsible for the development and implementation of plans and policies that ensure the growth and mobility of our community and is consistent with Bloomington's vision toward the future. And there's the rest of the best team in the world. We are comprised of 26 full-time employees, although not all of those positions are filled at this time. There are 4 divisions within our department: Planning Services Division, Development Services and Permits Division, Transportation and Engineering Services, and the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Major initiatives include the implementation of the comprehensive plan, the implementation of the new multimodal transportation plan, update of the Unified Development Ordinance, or UDO, implementation of recommendations from the recently entered into transportation demand management study, administer local zoning, development and traffic codes, and review and issue permits. So just as a quick refresher for our goals for 2019 and where we are for planning services, the 2019 transportation plan was adopted this year. We're in the process of developing the implementation strategy for the transportation plan. To date, we have had 5 events to encourage more bicycle transportation. Our goal was 2, and we have done 5 so far. And to post traffic counts and crash data on the Be Clear website, which is up on the screen. For development services in 2019, we have prepared and posted the adoption draft of the Unified Development Ordinance for public review that was put online on August the 5th. We currently are continuing to review permits for UDO compliance and issue them in a timely manner. So far, 430 permits have been submitted. We respond to and investigate U-report complaints, and we are at a 65% closure rate for the U-reports assigned to us so far this year. And we review development petitions for comp plan and UDO compliance, and there have been 64 petitions filed to date. Transportation and engineering services this year, we've completed the right-of-way acquisition for the 17th Street reconstruction project, and that project is on track for completion this year. 97% of the right-of-way excavation and seeding permits were reviewed within 10 business days. We are executing engineering service contracts for 11 projects is the goal. 7 have been executed to date, and there are 5 in queue. And to develop a long-term capital improvement plan, the adoption of the transportation plan was the first step in adopting this and moving towards this goal. And for our MPO, the adopted Complete Streets policy, also developed and adopted the Transportation Improvement Program plan for 20 to 2024. They continue to collect and analyze annual crash data, and they are updating, or they will begin the process of updating the Transform 2045 plan. That is their long-term plan, and will include new chapters listed here. A chapter on climate change, on complete streets strategies, on adoption of a Vision Zero plan, and sustainability in surface transportation. For 2020, on our list of things to do, for planning services, we plan to coordinate the development of a vision or special area plan for the current IU Health Hospital location. We plan to conduct a design charrette to gather input and ideas on redesigning Kirkwood Avenue as a shared street to focus on pedestrians. We plan to hold a minimum of 2 special events to encourage bicycle transportation and increase the number of participants in those events, and to implement at least 2 key strategies identified in the Transportation Demand Management Study. For development services in 2020, review development petitions for compliance with the comprehensive plan and the UDO, and prepare and present reports to the Plan Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, and to you all. To review all permit applications for compliance with the UDO within 10 business days of receipt of complete application. To resolve 85% of our U reports assigned to development services, and to facilitate the transition from the current UDO to our new UDO with outreach and education to elected officials, to interested groups, and to the public. Transportation and Engineering 2020 goals: host a minimum of 3 neighborhood meetings to present traffic and transportation-related information and collect feedback. Improve mobility options that meet Vision Zero goals. And what Vision Zero is a multinational road safety project that aims to achieve a highway system with no fatalities or serious injuries involving road traffic. Review 90% of all permits requested for right-of-way excavation and outdoor seating within 10 business days of receipt of a complete application, and to monitor and actively manage construction project schedules to ensure that 90% of construction contracts that are awarded are completed within the timelines that were specified in the bid and agreed to. 2020 goals for the MPO. The MPO is responsible for reporting, a lot of reporting to Federal Highway and also to INDOT. They plan to reach at least 80% completion rate of the planning activities that were detailed in the Unified Planning Work Program, complete 100% of the annual federal reporting requirements for the MPO by the end of the second quarter, conduct 4 quarterly project tracking meetings for all jurisdictional multimodal federal aid projects, and collect and analyze updated traffic and crash data and publish an annual crash report by the end of the 4th quarter. So some of our budget highlights: the grand total request is $4,053,623, which is an overall decrease of $407,303, or 9%. And it's explained in these lines below. There's increases in the general fund in 101 and other services and charges. that includes the redesign of Kirkwood and also the area plan for 3rd Street. Cume Cap development line decreases by $170,000. And then in Category 4, there's some increases for cost of inflation, and then decreases in other lines in 411 and in 431. And this is the comparison chart from this year to, as compared to what we expect in 2020. We anticipate that the reason for the overall reason for the decrease in Category 4 is that we anticipate being able to access funds through the TIF as opposed to general funds. So that's anticipated. And in conclusion, 2020 Planning and Transportation Department budget request reflects the implementation and continuance of essential projects and services for the city that align with the stated goals of careful planning for the built and natural environments to sustain and improve Bloomington's quality of life, ensuring that the growth and mobility of our community is consistent with Bloomington's vision toward the future, and improving safety for pedestrians and all multimodal transportation users in the city. And I thank you for your consideration, and I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Porter, for your presentation. Questions at this time from council members? Councilmember Strubel.
Yes, could you talk about the mapping of the UDO and how you anticipate that taking place? Will there be another consultant for that mapping? Will there be public process for that mapping process?
We're anticipating the mapping being like phase 3 of this process. We want to begin that soon. Hopefully this year. It's kind of hard to tell because we haven't seen how the hearings are going to go, but we do plan for that to be a very public process. And yeah, will be well publicized, and hopefully many people will participate in that process.
Right, but did you say there would or wouldn't be a consultant for that?
I would anticipate that there would be a consultant for that, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Granger.
Thank you. What's the anticipated completion date of the Transportation Demand Management Plan?
I believe it's to be done by the end of this year. Is that correct?
This year being 2019.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yeah, there was something that caught my eye in your memo under the community engagement and boards and commissions section of your budget. It says one of your goals is to present regular staff recommendations to boards and commissions with the goal of 90% acceptance or approval by the board or commission. Can you unpack that a little bit for me and explain what you mean?
Well, let me take a look at that. It's been a little bit since I've looked at my memo. Under boards and commissions, prepare.
It's on page 9 of your memo.
I'm sorry, it's not, well, it's not on my page 9.
It's the second bullet point under goals.
Oh, I see. Well, our goal is to present the facts and our analysis, our professional analysis of the projects that come before you, and we have that as an objective or goal that you all would agree with us.
Okay, so it's not just approval, but also if you recommend denial of certain petitions,
Yes,
you would also hope that we agree with you, right?
yes.
Okay. And of course, I just want to make sure there's a recognition that the city council, which doesn't hear all the petitions, but does hear some of them, is elected by the people. And of course, we have that perspective to act upon.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just want to make sure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from council members? Councilmember Rallo?
Thank you. I've got a couple. One is, do we know when the 7th Street Trail completion might be done?
I don't.
Okay. And I've been wondering about the new hospital and the bypass. It has a huge
I'm sorry, 2021. I'm being
2021
told.
for that?
2021, yes.
Thank you.
That's why I have the best team in the world here.
I know. Great. So the new hospital has a huge footprint. It's displacing a lot of soil. It's in the Griffey watershed. Is there a regular inspection regime going on to just gauge whether, with all the rain we've had, if we have any siltation problems with Griffey at this point? Or is that being...
Our development services manager will respond to that,
Okay.
Jackie Scanlon.
Thanks.
Hi, Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. So that property isn't subject to local zoning and planning regulation since it's state property. So we are not a part of that group that inspects and regulates the new hospital. But I do believe that they're still subject to Rule 5 regulations by the state, but not per our local regulations, if that makes sense.
I see. So, okay, so
So we
But-
have no erosion control, they're not subject to our erosion control rules.
well, in any case, is anyone noticing whether or not there's siltation going into Griffey through tributaries?
I do not know the answer to, I do not know
Would
the
it be
answer to that
Parks and Rec?
question.
Would
Parks and Rec, or maybe General Rule 5 review is now done at City of Bloomington Utilities,
Okay.
as well as, obviously, that's where the drainage engineer for the city is housed. So they may be watching that, we're not sure.
Okay. All right, I'll check. Thanks.
That is a question that's a very good question, Councilmember Rallo, and we'll find out an answer for you.
Oh, that would be helpful. I mean, we went through all the trouble of dredging Griffey. It would be a shame if it
Understood.
silted up again.
Thank you.
Other questions from council members? Councilor Piedmont Smith?
Yeah, I have a question about your increase in Category 1. So I'm looking at the actual budget sheet, the Excel sheet, and it looks like there's less than 1% increase in Category 1, 0.08%. And so I'm wondering, does this reflect a decrease in the number of staff? Because I assume staff are getting the 2% increase that everybody is getting across the
So
board.
Poppy is going to answer that question.
So I'm Poppy.
Mr. Underwood.
So as you may recall, and this question comes up every year, when we do the budgets, there are a picture in time that say, okay, as of this date, this is what we load, and that's compared to that same time a year ago. So there's changes that happen throughout the year that affect what that number becomes. But every full-time staff and everybody eligible for the 2% would be awarded that. There's been changeover in the department, so there may be people that come in, more that senior people that leave and less senior people get hired. Salaries may change between those two people. So again, they'll get the 2%, but it's a picture in time, so it's out of date as soon as the next day rolls around and there's changes in the personnel. It's just a nuance of how we have to do the budgets.
So maybe I can come back to Ms. Porter. Are there any increases or decreases in personnel requested for next year?
No,
Okay.
no, we're hoping that we can have a full roster going into 2020.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Additional questions? Councilmember Granger?
Talked about, this is in your 2019 budget goals update for the MPO. You said that one of the goals for this year is to initiate an updated adoption process for Transform 2045, and that a new chapter on climate change will be added. Where are you in that process? That's just a chapter that interests me.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you pointing that out, and it is of great interest to all of us. And I'm going to turn that question over to our Senior Transportation Planner for the MPO, Pat Martin.
Thank you for your question. The 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, we began updating that process in October of this year, September, October of this year, only a few months away. And we're currently in the research stage because, to our knowledge, none of the other MPOs in Indiana have adopted a chapter on climate change. And we view this as a cutting-edge topic, if not an absolute critical topic. So we're doing the research on that, and then just today I engaged the Federal Highway Administration to help in the assisting in the research, so that way we're using what I would call the best practices across the United States. So a long answer to your short question is we're underway with the research stage. We'll start outlining the chapter and other chapters in September and October. And then I advised the Federal Highway Administration this afternoon we would begin the public engagement portion of this in January and February. And this is when we would start with the committees, the Citizens Advisory Committee, the Technical Advisory Committee, where we're bringing people in and saying, this is what we're thinking, what do you think? And then we'll engage the public as a whole probably sometime around March and April. And I can see a number of meetings on, particularly on climate change. Some of the other things we're looking at, like Vision Zero, is something that's never been done in Indiana before. So we're doing, sometimes, you can always tell a pioneer by how many arrows they have in their back. And we'll be pioneers out there starting this fall and also all of next year. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just didn't want us to be waiting or dragging our feet. And you're right, we're Bloomington, and people won't like us outside of the city, so.
Actually, we're on the leading edge for the rest of Indiana right now. Nobody else is talking about it.
Okay.
We're the first ones.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Other questions from council members? Councilmember Sturbaum.
Yes, I'd like a little clarification on the amendment process at Plan Commission. As I understand it, there won't be amendments unless a resolution is passed by the Plan Commission to consider that amendment. And the resolution will have no public comment for that resolution. It'll just be considered by the Plan Commission to consider whether it can be an amendment that would then be drafted by the Planning Department. Is that correct? Particularly about the no public comment.
So Scott Robinson, Assistant Director, will address that question.
Okay.
Yes, that's the process that we're outlining. There's a twofold reason for that. So there's opportunity for the public to comment, and so the commission will be listening to those comments. And based on our experience with the transportation plan, the comprehensive plan update, where one council or plan commission member could sponsor an amendment, because this is a legal document and there's many places that are cross-referenced throughout, we wanted to get direction from plan commission so that staff could draft amendment that's appropriate, and then those amendments would be presented where there would be opportunity for public to comment on those. So that's the process that's outlined through the resolution that we worked with the chair of the Plan Commission on that.
There's good logic to that, except for bypassing the public comment on the resolution, because an issue has to get through the resolution process to even be considered by the Plan Commission, and it'll either fail or succeed without any public comment. So I'm suggesting that you should not bypass public comment in the resolution process.
Well, again, I don't think that there's any bypassing of public comment.
Well, there is. It says
All the
there is no-
resolution process allows is for the commission to suggest and direct staff on which amendments to take. There will be opportunities for the public to comment on those as they become forward and once they're fleshed out.
Later, if they pass the resolution phase, public can comment on them when they're in the amendment phase. But they cannot comment on it in the resolution phase. And that's when it will be either accepted by Plan Commission or rejected by Plan Commission. And without public comment, Plan Commission won't have full information from the public before they make that decision to either make direct staff to make the amendment or kill the amendment. So I'm
Again, there's
suggesting that
opportunity
that's
for the public to-
bypassing public comment.
I disagree. I don't think public comment is being bypassed. It's merely a procedural process so that the appropriate steps can be taken so amendments are crafted carefully and addressed throughout the document rather than each proposed idea being debated and discussed on the floor. That's the intent of the resolution, so that there's clear direction on what's being proposed and directed as opposed to many things happening at the same time, so that staff has the time in order to prepare those, and then there will be opportunity for the public to comment on that. And again, there's opportunity for the public to comment right now online. There'll be opportunity at each of the meetings, what's on the agenda that night, to help shape and form that discussion that the Plan Commission will be able to listen to.
So what harm would there be with allowing public comment at the resolution stage?
Again, that's something that we discussed with the chair, and that's the purview of the chair to implement that rule. And again, I don't necessarily agree that there's any bypass happening with the public. Those rules will be explained Monday night at the hearing.
So the chair is free to change that if he wants to.
They could, I suppose, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council members at this time? Seeing no more questions from the council, would anyone from the public like to comment on the planning and transportation presentation?
Thank you to the council for the opportunity to speak. My name is Andrew Gunther, Chair of the Environmental Commission for the City of Bloomington. I'm here commenting as a member of that same commission. If the council is really committed to locally fighting climate change and to locally addressing the existential threat that is the change in our climate to the human race on a local level, might I recommend looking into hiring more environmental planners? The Environmental Commission works with Linda Thompson, who's the senior environmental planner and the only environmental planner for the City of Bloomington. The Environmental Commission does a lot of work. We evaluated the entire UDO, and we are submitting comments for council and plan commission consideration on that same UDO. We also examine all the PUDs that come before the council and the plan commission. We look at everything from solar panels to compact cars to electric cars to grading permits to erosion warnings. We look at all those different factors when we're looking at whether or not a development is sustainable and environmental. The fact that there's only one staff member in planning and transportation committed to environmental planning and overseeing that process is monumental. Currently, we don't have a way to track whether the different conditions of approval that come forward for environmental planning. So, when we say you need to install your roof, but you need to make it so that you can install solar panels on in the future, we don't have a way to track whether or not that actually gets accomplished. Currently, that's handled by an intern on the Environmental Commission. I think we need to look at investing in personnel in this area. I think if you're looking at, not only environmental and economic development and sustainable development, but you also want to look at the planning that's happening currently every single day in our town. I think that a really great and important way to start is in planning and transportation with environmental planners to help the great staff that they already have that are doing the great work they already do. I just think we could do a little bit more in that area to try and keep things back in order, to try and make sure that as we go forward, we're doing it with the best possible practices and the best possible solutions we have to fight this existential threat to our human race. So I thank you for the consideration, and I thank you for your work on this budget so far. Thank you.
And we thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the public like to speak? Seeing no further public comment, comments from council members? Seeing none? Oh, sorry. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
I just wanted to commend the Planning Transportation Department. You've had several Herculean tasks in the last few years, and you are not done yet, with the UDO coming. And I know there have been many staff changes, which have also made it difficult. So I just want to thank you all for your hard work and your dedication, and your focus on the comp plan that we worked so hard on, and trying to make sure that it is implemented with every development. I know it's been a difficult position that you've been in between the comp plan being passed and the UDO being revised, so I don't envy your situation there. But I look forward to continuing working with you to pass a solid UDO that implements the priorities of our community. So thank you.
Councilmember Bowl?
I want to echo what Councilmember Piedmont Smith said and add that as a member of the Parking Commission, as chair of the Land Use Committee, I know how, frankly, overworked the planning department is. And it's another example of a department where I would easily, endorse additional staff. I know that things will slow down when we finally have dealt with these once-in-a-generation documents that we've been, I'm not sure I'm necessarily the one bringing the content to you, my friend. I wish I could give you better solace than that. But I mean, in this term of council, in this mayor's term, we've dealt with the comprehensive plan, the transportation plan, and now the UDO. It's all going to be dealt with in this 4-year span. And I'm not sure anyone in the City Hall was ready to handle all of them in that. I mean, that sounds like a long time, but it was a very quick pace. And so that's all fell on the shoulders of planning. We've asked them to do a lot this decade. And so, I would like to look in the next year's budget for ways that we can expand the work of the people who are planning the city, simply put. So I just want to thank you again for all the support you provided to those two entities and all the work that you've done. Thank you.
Other council member comments? Seeing none, we have do pass recommendation. Second. Do pass recommendation moved and seconded. I'll start on my left with Councilmember Granger.
No, it's called the roll call.
Call the roll.
Oh, better do the roll.
Let Mr. Sigler do some work.
Yeah. It's a roll call vote.
So, Rollo,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Granger,
Yes.
Ruff,
Yes.
Volan,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Sturbaum,
Yes.
Sandberg.
Yes.
So that was 8-0, we're missing?
7-0.
7-0.
Who's missing?
8-0.
No,
It's 8-0. Yeah, it is 8-0. 8-0, thank you, Mr. Deputy Clerk. And thank you, Ms. Porter, and the rest of the staff. And now we are ready for Public Works.
The Public Works general budget will have a 10-minute presentation limit with a limit of 8 minutes on questions from members.
Ready when you are?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Good evening, members of the Common Council. I'm Adam Wason, Public Works Director for the City of Bloomington. As always, it's an honor and a privilege to be here this evening and to serve the City of Bloomington. We are the administrative division of the Department of Public Works. Thanks to Christina Smith, Nate Nickel, Michael Large, Melissa Hawkins, and Michelle Wall for all of their efforts. On a daily basis, I truly believe that no other city department or division has as many touches with city residents through the services provided by the 105 full-time employees that make up the Department of Public Works. You up there all know this, but for the general public and those who may be watching at home on CATS, the Department of Public Works is made up of 6 distinct service areas: streets and traffic, sanitation, animal care and control, parking facilities, fleet maintenance, and facilities maintenance. The Department of Public Works administrative team assists in the overall administration and management of these services. We are small, but we are mighty. We are hopefully growing with one more staff member of public service professionals responsible for the fiscal management of the department, as well as the management of the chief administrative body of the city, the Board of Public Works. I'm confident that if the new position is granted as a special projects and operations manager, we will be greatly benefited if approved. We've been working on many major initiatives throughout 2019 that revolve around a few central themes. And the staff will probably cringe a little bit as I start into this because it's somewhat of our mantra. At all times, we're going to make the highest efforts to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar through wise investments in infrastructure. We're going to be taking new approaches to service delivery and sustainability through our modernization efforts. And we'll be increasing and improving our overall efforts regarding asset management and capital planning. As I'm sure Mr. Sherman, Clerk Bolden, and former council office employee Stacy Jane Rhodes can attest, management of regularly scheduled weekly meetings is time-consuming. The Board of Public Works meets every 2 weeks and takes roughly 2.5 full-time equivalents to manage that process. This includes staff coordination, contract execution, special event management, among many other unnoticed aspects of this important city function. I'll now briefly highlight some 2019 accomplishments before looking ahead to our 2020 goals. One of the areas I am most proud of in our departmental achievements is the advancements we're making in asset management. Proper administration of an asset management program is an ongoing task, daily task for many Department of Public Works employees. By creating and maintaining strong data sets when it comes to asset management, we can advance our decision-making on everything from when it is time to repave a road, to replacing an HVAC system, to completing a preventative maintenance job on a dump truck, to when a building needs to be tuck pointed for proper masonry maintenance. Proper asset management may be the most important thing the department can do for our long-term sustainability in our responsibility areas. The Department of Public Works is home to a high volume of customer service-related calls for all things city government. We want to be responsive and helpful at all times. We also take pride in the individuals responsible for the day-to-day management of the department. We value professional development and training opportunities for advancement, whether it be for specific software programs, trainings and conferences through the American Public Works Association, or the International City-County Managers Association. Staff are encouraged to grow professionally to better serve our residents. In many ways, our 2020 goals continue the goals of 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019. We need to keep our focus on delivering high levels of public services while simultaneously looking for ways to improve operations, improve our carbon footprint, and improve the overall conditions of the assets we're responsible for. We've taken a back-to-basics focus on infrastructure improvements such as the Downtown Alley Program, our pavement maintenance program, and the sidewalk participation program. We're also focusing on continuing to modernize our efforts in how we deliver services and look to the ever-evolving threats of global climate change. To highlight a few of our 2020 goals in the overall administration of the department, first and foremost, although planned for 2019, the Kirkwood pavement maintenance project has been postponed. That project from Walnut to Indiana came in nearly 40% higher than the engineer's estimates with only one bidder. We're rescoping that project a bit, seeking out NDOT grant assistance, and looking for leverage other resources to give our iconic Kirkwood Avenue a pavement and crosswalk upgrade. We're also seeking to continue our sidewalk assistance program as well as our contracted sidewalk repair program. When it comes to our goals for 2020 with the Board of Public Works, it's pretty basic. We want to provide all of the necessary administrative support to provide high levels of both internal and external customer service for those individuals bringing items in front of the board for their approval or consideration. Oh, I was a slide ahead, I'm sorry. Our asset management goals for 2020 are to continue to add more and better data sets. The efforts at both fleet maintenance and in our facility maintenance divisions will continue to grow these efforts and provide staff a platform to modernize and become more efficient with our capital planning efforts. For constituent services, it is again pretty simple. We're going to strive to offer the highest possible levels of constituent and customer services to any residents we work with. Now on to a few budget category highlights for the Department of Public Works administrative budget. Overall, Category 1 highlights involve a request for an additional position to focus on special projects and operations management. This is something I will truly be grateful for if approved, as it will allow me more time as the director to focus on the bigger picture more regularly. Our Category 2 highlights are based on putting resources towards increasing our efficiency in the sanitation division through a route optimization study. We also have a large decrease in costs here due to no municipal elections taking place in 2020. We've also requested additional dollars to continue becoming more mobile with in-field technologies for our asset management efforts. Overall, our Department of Public Works administrative budget request is a 4% decrease across all categories with a total request of $1.918 million. I'll end this presentation with the mantra that we talk about it in every staff meeting. We'll operate in an environment of respect at all times, we'll be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar, and we will seek to grow individually through professional development. I'd be happy to answer any questions you do have.
Thank you, Mr. Wason. Do we have questions from council members? Starting with Councilmember Rallo.
Thank you, Mr. Wason. Could you elaborate on the Kirkwood project and the delay? And
sure.
Just anecdotally, when I go downtown, I see that it's not just Kirkwood. It's a lot of streets that run perpendicular to Kirkwood that seem to need repaving as well. So,
Sure.
Are we going to get around to that sometime soon?
Well, every year we plan to try to repave 10% of our entire street network. The Transmap project we completed in 2017 and 2018, where we got condition index data for every pavement surface throughout the community, has allowed us to prioritize our paving based on the lowest ratings of street segments. So that Transmap project gave us a rating for every street segment throughout the entire city in a 1 to 100 rating. That's how we prioritize our paving efforts. When it comes to Kirkwood specifically, we had $350,000 earmarked in our 2019 budget for that project. After fully engineering the project, adding some safety features that weren't previously considered, and then getting the engineer's estimate back at about $500,000, we were thinking, okay, we might be able to cobble together enough funds to get this project done in 2019. When we put that out to bid, it was a little bit late into the bid season. A lot of the contractors already had their work lined up. We received one bid, and I think it was 40-some-odd% higher than even the engineer's estimate. I think the company that put in that bid put it in hoping they would get that really high contract. So what we've done is we've applied for some community crossings grants through NDOT to help offset some of those costs, and we're hopeful that we'll learn of an award here in the next 30 to 60 days. So disappointing, but we know we need to focus on those crosswalks and that pavement, and it's not something we're not losing sight of.
Wasn't there a commitment by the Graduate Hotel to pave part of it because of?
They repaved their commitment, yes.
Oh,
it was the southern lane of Kirkwood. I think they had about a 50-foot stretch or something.
That's it?
Yeah.
So you'll know soon?
Hopefully.
In a month or so?
Hopefully, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I was wondering if the Board of Public Works has considered the licensing for motorized scooters yet after we passed the legislation?
I think we're looking at mid-September. I think we're a couple weeks behind working with the legal department on implementation, but we're looking at So we met this past, was it the 17th, Chris, that we meet next? I think it's on September 17th that we're hoping to do that.
Okay, so at that meeting, you would have a proposal that you'd hope that could be adopted?
That's the goal of the administration, working with the legal department, Alex Crowley and his crew, and Beth and planning. You know, it's a big lift.
It's a big team, yeah.
It's a big lift.
Well, I think that's pretty good, September 17th.
Yep.
I have one more, but if you want to go to somebody else.
No, go ahead and ask the second one.
In the constituent services program portion, in personnel, you have an increase of 25%. Is that adding personnel, or is that?
That's a portion of the new position we're requesting.
Oh, I see. Can you remind me what that new position is?
It's still a working title, but in my mind, I'd like to call it something like an operations and special project manager. What I really look forward to, if that position's granted, is trying to, you know, I spend a lot of time in my daily work with trying to put out the fires from the day before, or working on a very specific personnel issue, and I could certainly use some assistance on those day-to-day type of things in order to focus a bit more on the big picture, on the long term.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Councilmember Sims, and then Councilmember Sturbaum.
Thank you. First thing I want to say, so I don't have to be redundant, because you'll give a couple presentations. Thank you and your staff for everything they do for our city.
Thank you.
I think many of us realize how much you have to do, and we appreciate it. We can improve, I'm sure you would admit.
Yes, absolutely.
But we appreciate it.
Striving every day.
A couple specific questions. With the LED streetlight conversion program, how far along are we there? And can you talk about any particular savings that we've either seen or anticipate?
So we're not very far in that entire switch out throughout the entire city.
Do we plan to be done by the end of this year? Is that what I read?
Oh, no. I mean, we would have to find some major grant funding or
Correct.
outside funding if we were to try to convert every street light to LED by the end of 2019 or 2020. What we're doing is anytime we have a replacement of an existing fixture or a new fixture go in, we're always using LED. And we're working closely with Duke Energy on trying to come up with a potential program where we can work on some of our major corridors. It's not cheap to switch those out. I'd say we're less than 5% done overall citywide, but we own thousands of streetlights. Literally, how many? She's good. 3,103 streetlights throughout the entire city. So, but yes, no, it's certainly a priority for us. We're going to be doing the Showers complex this next year with new LEDs and such, but it's a big lift.
Okay, thank you. I must have misread that. And replacing as we go, I think, is
And we are going to, I mean, we are seeking out opportunities for a large scale. It's just, we were looking at when we did the, when we worked with the ESG, Energy Systems Group, you know, we were looking at potential tax-exempt financing and bonding for it at that point. We didn't move forward due to the high cost then, but certainly considering it.
okay. And one of the things that we've talked about for a while, probably along with the alley activation project and some more downtown projects, but talk to us about, have we made any progress or in underground utilities? And I know that's been one, and I know that's tough. Maybe I shouldn't even brought that up, but I know we've been talking about it, and I know that will enhance what it is we want to do downtown.
You know what, Councilmember Sims, we have actually. Duke Energy, we haven't, Duke Energy has, but they're along the Beeline corridor near the Hyatt Place up north towards 7th Street by Zagreb, by Yonkos. They've worked on getting all of that underground, and that was a major undertaking. So there's some possibilities that it may happen on the east side of the square with some projects that are coming up there, but I can tell you, unless we're paying for it, Duke's not much interested.
Right. Yeah. I was just checking to see if we've made any progress.
love
because I
to.
know that's something we're trying to do. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Sturbaum.
Yeah, so I see the increases list the sidewalk repair assistance program. So is that increasing from this year to next year?
No, I think our total amount requested is the same as last year. We're just looking to do that second round at $100,000 worth of dollars that can go to the 50-50 participation.
Has there been consideration of increasing that
Given all of the budgetary constraints within the department, I would love to, but for 2020, we weren't able to balance that out with all the other priorities. The hard part too, quite honestly, in this first year of it, is finding enough willing participants. We've really had to beat the streets and hit the streets and get out there and knock on some doors to get some participation. So we've got a couple great projects coming up here this fall where we've got at least one whole block on Howe, a couple across the street, and then we're looking at, I think, University as well in some areas.
Well, I just suggest that
There is a $6,000 increase in the
Few more
council
minutes.
sidewalk.
Sorry.
So do we need to make some kind of a motion for 5
There's already a
minutes?
motion, it was accepted, requires a 2/3 vote that can be done by voice. You have to,
All in favor of extending questioning for 5 minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
nay.
We'll continue.
So I would just say it was just introduced and people aren't
Yep.
aware of it.
Yep,
But I'm sure it will become more and more popular. So
absolutely.
if I may encourage that we add to that fund.
Being the very first year this year and looking at just a second round next year, certainly for years to come, I would be happy to look at more. I don't know that we'd be able to do it for 2020, like I said, but the other thing we increased the last 2 years and have kept steady this year is our contracted sidewalk dollars. We started at 50 in 2017, 118, 150 in 19, and I think we're at 150 again in 2020 budget
Is
request
that
there.
for new or repair?
That's for repair of sidewalks for folks that we can't get any compliance out of. So we look to the worst of the worst sidewalks. They tend to be areas where the residents just simply even can't participate at all.
Right. And then I didn't understand all the answer to the scooter question, but what makes me wonder is when are the signs going up for the new zone?
So we're working on more signage for the expanded dismount zone right now, and then we're working on some sidewalk stencils, getting those approved by people that have better taste in sidewalk stencils than I do, and we'll get working on that right away.
Is there any kind of publicity rollout that
Yeah, there
coincides with
certainly
the
will be.
student
Yeah,
return?
we need to get to the point of the licensing here in mid-September, and then there will certainly be a big communications PR push. Or just me walking down Kirkwood saying, can you get off the sidewalk?
Could be maybe the HT will write about that.
Maybe.
Thank you.
Mr. Underwood, did you feel like you were cut off a minute ago during that motion?
I just wanted to say that we did increase the council sidewalk committee funds by $6,000, so there was some increase in sidewalk dollars from last year to this year.
Okay,
Did you
thank
say 6,000?
6,000, yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Granger?
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about why there's an increase in the liability casualty premiums? Are more people suing us, or what's going on?
No, this is not suing us, but we have insurance claims that don't meet deductibles for all sorts of things. Whether it's random liquid dripping from a roof of a parking garage to maybe a sanitation truck backing over a street light that's privately owned, or I could come up with some other interesting examples, but it's just sort of those day-to-day things where it doesn't meet the deductible levels, and we're better off paying it out of pocket than making an insurance claim.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rollo?
Mr. Wason, while we're in the topic, or it was brought up that the council sidewalk budget was increased by $6,000, that's approximately 2%. I think that essentially matches inflation, but is the cost of sidewalks increasing greater than the rate of inflation?
Is the cost of sidewalks, I can tell you the cost of sidewalks has gotten more expensive year over year, that's for sure.
Greater than 2%?
I'd probably venture a guess. Over the last 4 years, it's probably greater than 2%.
Could we check into that, Mr. Underwood, just to make sure that we're keeping pace with at least the cost, the increased costs, because it stands to reason maybe concrete's going up more than
That's one of the discussions we always have with the
Inflation.
department, especially with Public Works, both in all the material costs. One of the things that I always mention is the volatility of material purchases. So as we've talked about, so we budget certain amounts for paving and sidewalks and salt, and depending on what happens to us. So if all of a sudden concrete goes way up or paving costs go way up, then we have less money available for salt, and conversely the other. We try to do averages, and we look at like a 5-year average of what those are and kind of guess at what we think they're going to increase.
It's my experience on the sidewalk committee that formerly we used to budget, we routinely budget 10% more than the cost estimate, but oftentimes it doesn't cover it in the final analysis. So it seems to me that by experience, unfortunately, we've had planning and transportation or public works kind of fill in and help and so forth, but utilities, but it would be good to keep pace.
We certainly, it's, as we said, you've got so much dollars, and depending on the fund, we try to budget for and increase everything that we can up to what that fund will handle. And since there are limited revenue streams for us in a lot of those types of accounts, it becomes more and more difficult every year. But we do try to spread those dollars among departments and cobble money together as much as possible.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions, council members, at this point, so we don't, or do we need to do another vote?
We need to do another vote.
No other, but there's no other questions, so we do not need to do that. We'll move to the
Animal
public
care.
for general.
That was Public Works Administration. I think we moved to Animal Care and Control next.
Yeah, but I was going to say if we wanted to do it individually, have any opportunity right now, Mr. Parliamentarian, what do you say? Should we wait till we do the individual?
Isn't there a vote on the Public Works budget general, the general budget? That's what I thought, so we go to the public for comment.
Yeah. So any public comment on the Public Works General? Seeing none, we'll have final comments from council member on the general. Councilmember Sturbaum.
I just failed to compliment the Public Works Department on the sidewalk repair program.
Thank you.
Much needed, and it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask the deputy clerk to.
No, it's recommend you pass.
Yeah. It's been moved and seconded. Would you want to do a roll call?
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Granger,
Yes.
Ruff,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Sturbaum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rollo,
Yes.
Okay, Public Works General passes also 8-0. Ready for animal control?
This is a 10-minute proposal with 8 minutes of questions.
Ready as you are. Again, Adam Wason, Public Works Director. I can honestly say of all the divisions of Public Works, the Animal Care and Control Division is where I seek solace when days get tough. Puppies and kittens and birds and turtles and rats and ferrets and snakes and chinchillas. Seriously, we've had chinchillas. And I'm sure I'm missing at least a dozen other species that have come into our care. It's a wonderful place. Many thanks to Virgil Souter, Julia Epley, Jenny Southern, and Emily Herr for their leadership down there, as well as all of our animal control officers, our animal care technicians, our volunteers, and everyone else that contributes at the Animal Care and Control Division. I should probably flip through slides. The employees of the Animal Care and Control Division are some of the most passionate employees I've ever worked with. And I used to work at a brewery. So animal welfare is not just their mission. It is many of the employees' passion in life, and I couldn't be more proud to work with such an outstanding group of employees. There's 17, just over 17 full-time equivalent employees at the animal shelter, and we work very closely with both Monroe County government, the Monroe County Humane Association, Pets Alive, amongst many, many, many other partners. We're trying to do things the best we can down there for each of those animals that come into our care, and we're doing so on a daily basis. Just a couple brief updates on 2019 goals. The live release rate, I'll just explain these so that the general public knows what we're talking about here, but the live release rate is the figure that notes what percentage of animals left the shelter due to transfers to rescue groups, adoptions, and animals returned to their owners. Due to the mission and design of the shelter, not be a long-term holding location for animals, this is a better gauge of success than a save rate. which would include the percentage of animals still in our care. The shelter's save rate for 2018 was 94%, and the live release rate at mid-year is 75%. The live release rate is currently not meeting our goals and expectations, but it's due to some very specific factors of it's kitten season, mid-year's kitten season, so we have lots and lots of kittens that go to foster homes that aren't yet old enough to be adopted. So that's why that rate's a little higher than we'd like right now, but by the end of the year, we should meet our goal. It's probably not hard to believe. We have a lot of community members that want to volunteer at the shelter. We have a pool of over 250 dedicated and passionate volunteers, and I can assure you we are the #1 destination for folks seeking restitution in the criminal justice system. We love it, and we wouldn't have it any other way. We're also constantly promoting responsible pet ownership, and we work really hard with our adopters to make sure we are setting them up for success with their new forever friend. So far in 2019, only 5.3% of animals have been returned post-adoption, something we're proud of. This year, we've been recording all wildlife calls to the shelter in order to gather data and information on, excuse me, on human-wildlife conflicts and how the animal control officers can function as better educational resources. I'd also like to note that's a picture of one of our brand-new animal care and control vehicles. We love our new vehicles. We love our new facility that the council and the administration have chosen to invest in. It truly makes a difference in our everyday operations. Our, excuse me, our 2020 budget goals are very similar to our previous year's goals. We want to provide the highest levels of comfort and care to animals in our care, and we want to safely and responsibly place them in forever homes as quickly and as often as possible. We're also going to continue to be a volunteer hub to the point that we have to close down the volunteer application process every single year. One amazing statistic, in 2018 alone, we had 10,700 hours of volunteer service at the shelter. If you put a dollar figure to that at about $15 an hour, you can just figure, you know, that's a heck of a value we're getting. We're also going to continue our educational efforts for the humane treatment of animals in the community. Staff works very closely with each and every household that is looking to adopt to understand their individual household factors and how that will impact their ability to be a successful adopter. This includes introductions to other animals in the home, children in the home, as well as talking about the financial implications of pet ownership. We're also investing in our staff through professional development and certifications. We have all of our animal control officers working towards certifications through the National Animal Control Association. We're looking to have 2 of our 3 ACOs fully certified by the end of 2020, excuse me, with the other staff member working towards their certification by 2021. One thing to note over these next few slides where we're going over the budget, this first slide is for categories 1, 3, and 4 of the general fund. The next slide will be for categories related to donations over $5,000. There are 2 separate funds there. So in the first category 1 highlights here, the increases are a direct result of moving 1 animal care technician from part-time to full-time. And then we also have a rather large capital request to replace an aging piece of equipment that is essential to our operations. In category 3, just a small overall increase, and then category 4, as you can see, that's the capital project I was speaking of. From our donations over $5,000 funds, we're requesting increases for medical care, behavior trainings, and evaluations, and then a category 4 request for further infrastructure improvements to the site and facility. This would include some curb work that wasn't included in the construction of the parking lot, as well as some other improvements to the older parts of the buildings. One thing I can say about this donations over 5,000 line, we've had some rather significant donations to the shelter from some animal welfare activists in the last few years. Without these funds, we'd have some major needs, and it's been much appreciated. So, in particular, thanks to Joe Liska and some others that have made it their point to bequest to the shelter. Overall, a 9% increase from the 2019 budget request. for a total of $1.903 million. And, we'll continue to focus on animal welfare for any animal in our care. We'll continue investing in our employees, and we will continue to invest in the facility that serves the animal welfare needs for the entire county. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from council members? Councilmember Rallo.
Thank you, Mr. Wason. Under the topic of animal control field operations, one of the goals is to decrease the amount of cruelty, abuse, and neglect calls by 3% through increased education and enforcement. And it seems that there's been quite a spike, a 24% increase. Of course, we want any cases of cruelty, abuse, and neglect to be reported. So the reduction in calls should be then a reflection of that less abuse is happening, right? So how are we going to go about, particularly in terms of enforcement?
I'm going to take a quick stab, and then I'm going to turn to Virgil Souter with our director. We had a harsh winter, and I think the vast majority of our calls tend to come in the winter. He's shaking his head. I'm going to have him take over right now.
So the percentage-wise looks like a large increase, but when we're talking about only 76 calls versus like 50. And these are just calls coming in. They're not a measure of those that are actually proven cases of neglect and abuse. So it's a hard thing to gauge how to justify or how our education and enforcement efforts is doing by this number, but it's the best number we currently have to go on as far as how we are getting those in. So it's a plus that we're getting more because we do want those received, but it does look like we are having more of an issue in the city. But again, I can get you, I don't have it in front of me, but I can get you the number of calls that are justified if that's helpful.
Well, maybe, yeah. I'd like to know more details about that number. Is it correct to say that that number reflects a lot of repeat offenders? In other words, are there multiple calls embedded in there of the same person that's neglecting their pet or an
There's
animal?
definitely some of those. And so if we have a hot spot in the year, we're going to have more calls than that one person. So yeah.
So would the enforcement component of this effort involve taking the animal?
If it's founded, yes, we would take the animal in that situation. So with the calls, sometimes we need 2, 3, 4 calls to build a case in order to actually remove the animal from that location.
Okay. We can correspond a bit, or maybe I'll elaborate in questions from our council attorney.
Sure thing.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Seeing no other questions from council members, would anyone from the public like to comment on the animal care and control budget? No public comment? Any final comments from council members? Councilmember Granger.
This is a soft spot for me too, so I always like to hear the feel-good stories. I am a lot concerned about the animal cruelty, and I will be following up with that a little bit because I'm just, you hear stories, and perhaps we only hear the worst of the worst, and that kind of fuels our anger. But I thank you for what you do, and thank you for letting me, cry up over the dogs and cats and lizards and alligators.
Councilmember Sturbaum.
Just again for next presentation, cat videos.
Other final comments from council members? Seeing none.
Recommend you pass.
Would the deputy clerk please call a roll?
Granger.
Yes.
Ruff.
Yes.
Bolin.
Yes.
Sims.
Yes.
Sturbaum.
Yes.
Sandberg.
Yes.
Rollo.
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
8-0.
8-0. Thank you. And are we ready for fleet maintenance?
Fleet maintenance.
This is 10-minute presentation with 8-minute question period.
Excellent. Oh, you started. So fleet maintenance is truly a backbone division for the city, for the entire city. Fleet literally keeps things running through maintenance and repair of the 700-plus vehicles and pieces of equipment assigned to the various departments of the city so that they can meet their missions. Jason Spear, Lisa Lazelle, Lisa Bolin, and our mechanics do a tremendous job with the limited resources they have to keep our city running. The variety of knowledge and skill sets required to keep things running is quite amazing. Our mechanics are ever adapting to the newest technologies in vehicles, and these valuable staff members maintain everything from a push mower and a weed eater to an aerial ladder fire truck and our new fleet of sanitation trucks. We're looking to take on some major initiatives in 2019 and 2020. We're continuing major initiatives in 2019, and that will go into 2020. We're increasing our asset management efforts tremendously, which I'll talk a lot about. We're looking to acquire some GPS positioning and telematics systems for some of our specific vehicle sets. We're making upgrades and modernization efforts across the board. A couple updates from our 2019 goals. Then I'll move quickly into our 2020 goals and budget highlights. We stay very busy at Fleet with just preventative and routine maintenance, major repairs when we choose not to outsource them, and all the other aspects of maintaining and managing the fuel system. Preventative maintenance is regularly performed on a piece of equipment or vehicle to lessen the likelihood of it failing in the field. This is smaller things like oil changes, topping off fluids, wipers, some of the most basic preventative maintenance type things. We also do routine maintenance, which goes beyond just those rather typical things. You know, preventative maintenance things tend to happen every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. Routine maintenance goes beyond that to things that happen every 10,000 or more miles. That would be like brake pads and fluid flushings, and hose and belt replacements, those sorts of things. Managing fuel use and maintaining the fueling sites requires daily tasks and monitoring. Maintaining the shop and part inventory down to the nuts and bolts is also a daily task. The vehicle points analysis assigns a rating to every vehicle based on the age, mileage, and current condition of those 700 vehicles and pieces of equipment I spoke about. Of our major modernization efforts of 2019 that will have greater impacts on operations in 2020 is a project currently being implemented to utilize modules in our asset management system, which we call Lucity. The entire Public Works Department is using a program called Lucity for our asset management efforts, and Fleet is moving to use one of their modules for asset management for our entire Fleet division. That asset management system will streamline work orders, communications with the assigned vehicle user, and will allow us to complete reporting tasks that would take days, weeks, or months in the past into a simple reporting function where you hit print. With all of these asset management efforts, we're taking great care to populate the system with accurate data for future reliability. In that, preventative maintenance is an area where the communication functions within the system will greatly improve operations by monitoring usage and informing users of appointments for maintenance. Another major efficiency is our purchase of a mobile unit for oil changes and preventative maintenance, where we'll go off-site instead of requiring users to come on-site. Routine maintenance is another area where our Lucity and asset management efforts in 2020 will be greatly benefited from. One of the #1 complaints for this internal service division is the amount of downtime for vehicles when they are in for service at the shop. Going forward, we'll be able to track downtime as part of the functionality of the new system. The other part of our 2019 efforts that will move into 2020 as well is that we're going to be completing a cost of services study here in the end of the third quarter and fourth quarter of 2019. This cost of services study will allow us to make decisions on future staffing requests, outsourcing, alternative fueling opportunities, amongst many other items that the study will include. One area of Fleet services the average resident wouldn't know about is our emergency maintenance operations. In the end, the Fleet Maintenance Division is a full-service garage that also provides emergency call-out assistance. Ideally, no vehicle in the field would ever break down, but even the idealist in me knows that isn't realistic. Whether a middle of the night Whether a middle-of-the-night issue with a fire truck or a middle-of-the-day issue with the $500,000 paving machine, Fleet is always on duty. Fuel service is an area in 2020 where, with the new asset management system, in combination with the possibility that we'll be able to put enough funds together for beginning to implement a citywide GPS telematics program for all of our city vehicles. This is not an effort to be Big Brother. GPS telematics are the go-to for fleet managers for the vast information the systems can provide. Whether real-time idling monitoring, location and route tracking, acceleration and braking monitoring, to allowing the public to see where the snowplow or sanitation truck is en route, GPS technologies and telematics is what every modernized fleet operation is turning to. We are hopeful that we will begin outfitting particular vehicle types in 2020 to begin this project. Overall, our shop and parts inventory goals are really quite simple. We're striving to maintain a proper inventory of fluids, parts, tools, and equipment to keep us up and running. We want to accurately track and maintain this information, and with our updates to our asset management efforts, these efforts will become much more ingrained into the daily activities of the division. Our 2020 budget goals when it comes to our annual vehicle points analysis project, again, is a major function of this asset management effort. I've explained this to the council before, and I've explained it to many people. In order to produce the vehicle points analysis on an annual basis, and in the way that we've done it always in the past, it's an Excel spreadsheet with a lot of pen and paper and retrieving information from the various systems that manage all of our assets right now. And it takes one employee 2 to 3 months sometimes in any given year to complete that entire project. With our asset management efforts and making sure that the data we put into that asset management system is good, it'll literally be a report function that you hit print on. It'll be available real time on a daily basis, and it's something we're really excited about. We spend a lot of time tracking the condition of our vehicles. Some categorical budget highlights for fleet maintenance. The Category 2 increases are largely due to price increases for parts, equipment, and fuel. We are expecting an increase in overall fuel costs for 2020. Our Category 3 increases are largely due to increased professional development costs, installing outdated overhead doors, installing new overhead doors for the outdated ones currently at the garage. We also have an increase in the quoted towing costs and for the purchase of new software subscriptions required for vehicle maintenance. This last point is where the entire subscription world is going. You never get a one-time software purchase charge anymore. Everything is moving to the annual subscription format, just like Netflix, just like Adobe, and just like Microsoft. And that's the same thing we're having with Ford, Chevy, all the different types of vehicles we purchase. Our Category 4 increase is solely due to the purchase of new equipment, such as tire mounting equipment that was part of our budget memo. Overall, it's a 9% increase for our fleet maintenance division and a total request of $3.358 million. Like I've stated previously, fleet maintenance is very much one of the most important internal services provided at the city. The responsibility of keeping fire trucks, police cars, and sanitation trucks operating daily is a never-ending task. But we're also responsible for every pickup, passenger vehicle, and lawnmower. It's an area we realize is directly related to our sustainability efforts. It's why we're including Lauren Travis, our sustainability director, in every vehicle purchase going forward. It's why we're exploring the mayor's climate change electric vehicle purchasing cooperative for any and all of our new electric vehicle purchases. We certainly recognize the importance of this and are trying to do our best to balance providing the necessary public services that we must deliver with also reducing our carbon footprint. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you again, Mr. Boyson. Any questions from council members? Councilmember Granger?
Thank you. You talked about, in your preventative maintenance section, purchasing a service truck to provide in-house towing. How much is the service truck?
Oh, we went with the I'm sorry, that's a mistake there. We, instead of using that money for the tow truck, we're using it for a preventative maintenance truck. So this would be a truck that we could take. I forgot to update that when we made that final decision. I apologize.
So now it's for what?
It's for a preventative maintenance truck. So this would be a truck that we can take on
That you
site.
take out, yeah.
Yeah, take out into the field. So instead of having the vehicles out at the Monroe Water Treatment Plant come all the way into town, with 6 employees having to bring those 6 different vehicles, we'll be able to go on site.
Sure, okay, then that kind of,
Apologize for that.
no, it eliminates the question of how you are raising towing costs when you tell us you're going to reduce them. So now it's making sense. Thank you.
Councilmember Sturbaum?
I'm giving him a minute. Do we still have a grinder, concrete grinding vehicle
Concrete grinding
to
vehicle?
grind concrete in a road or a sidewalk?
No, we don't.
We used to have one, but we don't now?
Well,
Have a milling
you
machine.
gotta come up with
you out there.
Yeah, you gotta come up
You need
with
to
that.
come up and speak.
Okay, that was my question.
Oh, the milling machine. So to mill up asphalt or to,
To mill sidewalk unevenness, to mill concrete downtown?
the street department has a small grinder that they can use. It's not on, it's more handheld, right? But when I referred to the milling machine, that is the $500,000 piece of equipment we use to mill the old road surface before we put down fresh pavement.
Right, so the handheld grinder can be used on simple
Sidewalks, yeah.
sidewalks?
Yep, and we do that. We do that, yes.
Right, okay.
Other questions from council members? Councilmember Sims?
Just something that piqued my interest. When you purchase new vehicles and you seek advice or input from the sustainability director, what do they do?
Well, so this
Do
is
they tell
something
you to
new.
get an eco or?
Yeah, so this
or
is
an
something
electric?
new.
Yeah.
You know, we've explored alternative fuel vehicles before. We've purchased hybrid vehicles on many occasions. But just to seek out there, I mean, Lauren's a great resource for me in a lot of ways. And so this is an effort to say, hey, you know, here's the type of vehicle we need for the type of service we want to provide. You know, can you offer input? So this is where I think some clarity would be helpful in terms of, you know, we're looking for our daily passenger vehicles, maybe for our nighttime ambassador to maybe find an electric vehicle that would meet her needs, or, you know, for our pool vehicles that are mainly used for in-town travel for an employee to go from City Hall for a meeting over to IU's campus for a meeting. You know, look at electric vehicle purchases there. We're going to look at alternative fuel purchases whenever we can, when it makes sense, mostly hybrids right now. The gas hybrids are most reliable right now. But then we also need to start thinking about the future of what, you know, we're never going to be, right now, we couldn't purchase a electric charged dump truck that can do leafing and plowing and work on the asphalt program. But technologies may change, you know, with the task force that Vic Kelson's heading up on with the anaerobic digestion at the wastewater plants, where we might be able to move to potentially CNG for some, or compressed natural gas for some things. Those are the sorts of decisions that we'll seek advice on. And, you know, at some point in time in the future, we're going to be moving from diesel to alternative fuels and alternative energy sources for transportation.
Thank you.
Other questions from council members? Seeing none, would we have anyone from the public who would like to speak to the fleet maintenance budget? Seeing none, final comments from council members? Councilmember Piedmont Smith?
Yeah, I really like the focus on reducing fuel use, which will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And also, there was a mention in the budget memo that you were going to identify the 20 most underutilized vehicles in the city and reassign them where they can be utilized more efficiently. So these are all great steps, and I commend you on increasing efficiency all the way around. It's good for staff, for you know, working more efficiently, and also, of course, for our environment.
I may have a hard time getting a few of the department heads on board for that, but we'll see.
Other comments from council members? Seeing none, do we have a recommendation?
Recommend do pass.
Would the deputy clerk please call the roll? All right.
Ruff,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes?
Sims,
Yes?
Sturbaum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rollo,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Granger,
The vote is 8-0. And now we're ready for traffic control on streets.
It's a 15-minute presentation with 12 minutes of questions.
Excellent. The Street and Traffic Division. This by far is our biggest division within Public Works, with the most personnel, the largest budget, the highest number of funding sources, and the widest array of responsibilities. Staff at the Street and Traffic Division are responsible for maintaining safe and passable rights-of-ways. They're responsible for the fall leafing program, for winter weather control, pavement and sidewalk maintenance, traffic control, street lights, urban forestry, and emergency management coordination. They're made up of 38 full-time equivalents that are in the process of implementing several major new initiatives to meet the above responsibilities. We've talked a lot about the first year of the sidewalk participation program already, and we're very excited about that. We're also looking to modernize traffic signal technologies for better communications, as well as continue the Brighton B-Town project. I've got to say a big thank you to Joe Van Deventer, our street superintendent, and his supervising team of Danny Bittner, Mike Stinson, and Herb Kinzer. Those guys work their butts off and are often, and one of every 4 weeks, they're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, one out of every 4. And I couldn't possibly say enough thank yous to the office staff down there and all of the equipment operators, the laborers, everybody that makes up that division. It's truly a lot of hard work going on there for all the right reasons. I'll give you some brief 2019 budget updates again. Our pavement maintenance efforts, this would include patching and filling potholes, milling street surfaces before we repave, as well as crack sealing. So far in 2019, we've filled nearly 15,000 potholes. Continuation of all of our pavement maintenance efforts are a big focus of what we do at the street department. We likely won't meet our original lane mile paving goals for 2019 due to how wet of a month June was. You can't lay asphalt in the rain. But we're going to make every effort to play catch up if we get a mild fall and not an early winter. Also of note, I'd like to state my thanks and relay how important it was to fund our 2017 and 2018 Transmap Condition Inventory project. That was part of our innovation efforts back a couple years ago, but that high-tech data collection effort saved us not only in the personnel costs of the old school way of driving up and down every street with a piece of paper saying 7, 7, 6, 5, literally that's how we used to do pavement condition indexing. To have that, I call it the Google van, but it's totally not a Google van, but it's a van that uses LiDAR technology and does an extremely accurate job of giving us a pavement condition index for every segment of street we own or we maintain. It was a huge investment that was paying off great dividends. I already spoke to the disappointment that was the Kirkwood project. We're going to get that done. We just need to figure out exactly how it's going to get funded, but I won't elaborate on that much more. Snow. Snow is simply a 4-letter word. The 2018-2019 snow control season was heavier than the 2017-2018, and our salt and fuel expenditures sure showed that. One major shift for cost savings and pre-treatment of the roadways includes our purchase of salt brine equipment for our snow control fleet. So we have always traditionally used Cargill's green, what's it called? Enhanced de-icer, which has increased 10% year after year. I think we were expecting a 25% increase in those salt costs this year. So Joe and his team looked at what cost savings could be generated by moving to a brine machine, and we will be for the first time. And have we ever used brine? We've never used brine in Bloomington, but you see NDOT use it, you see a lot of other governmental agencies, and we're excited to utilize that technology. As I mentioned previously, our sidewalk repair efforts will be some of our best to date, and very much appreciate the administration and the council's commitment to putting more dollars to those over the last couple of years. Our 2019, leafing's on that one. Our 2019 leafing program was one of our more successful years. We were able to hit each of the street segments twice before the major winter weather season hit. I can recall a year, whether it was 15 or 16, I don't exactly recall, but we were picking up iced over piles of leaves with dump trucks, and I hope we never have to do that again. For some additional 2019 updates, we are on target to meet the goal of replacing all of our LED light bulbs. So back 10 years ago plus, we changed our traffic signal bulbs to LED. We're now updating to the latest generation of LED lights. Where we at street light? Our 2019 budget goals for street lighting were also pretty simple. We were replacing outdated high-pressure bulbs when possible with LED technologies, and we also used the local road and street funding category for our traffic signal controller box inventory. That's a lot of words to say when a car accident occurs that takes out a traffic signal box. It's really expensive to put a new box in right away, so we try to always maintain an inventory at the street department for when that occurs. And then it's also hard when the drivers might not be insured to get those funds back from insurance that doesn't exist. Our street sweeping efforts have also been meeting the goals we set for 2019. We're on target to sweep each road section twice and sweep the downtown commercial area 6 times. We've also made some innovation efforts here, some that are rather basic. We put signs in the neighborhoods now before we come to sweep the streets. It's something we've been doing for the last year or so. And we also have a interactive map online to tell you where we've been and where we're going. Back one. Just in terms of alley repairs, we maintain, I think it's 230 some odd miles of alleys. We're responsible for 230 some odd lane miles of alleyways throughout the entire city. It's not our highest priority, but when we do have requests that need major repair, we'll get out there and do what we can. One of the projects I've been most excited about is the Downtown Alley Activation Project. It's not a budget issue or anything, but the bicentennial bond funding is going to allow us to make some major activation improvements in those alleys downtown. We're still hopeful to get one of those projects off the ground before the end of the year. We may bid several of them together next spring, depending on what some engineer estimates come back at. For urban forestry, we're working with the Parks Department on a daily basis to help manage the urban forest. In 2019, we've taken down over 150 unsafe trees and an additional 40 stumps out of the public right-of-way. For our traffic management efforts, and one important area of our traffic management efforts and our overall system user safety is our outside pavement marking contract. So I'm not sure if anyone saw, it was just a couple weeks ago, we had, if you see that truck on the right side, they were in town doing all of our long line pavement markings. This includes bike lanes, dashed lines in the center of the road, all of our long lines. That cost has risen about 10% year over year, so we're expecting that into 2020 as well. For our 2020 goals and for our pavement maintenance efforts don't change much. Our goal every year is going to be to try to pave 10% of our road network. Some years we're more successful, some years we're less. Often that's got to do with what type of winter we've had, how much money we have left for asphalt, and what type of weather we get throughout the summer. The capital investments of the administration and council over the last 7 years have been some of the most crucial components of our success. We have bought more dump trucks. We have bought a $500,000 paving machine. We have bought a $500,000 milling machine, things that are making an impact on a daily basis in terms of our efficiencies. Before we had that milling machine, we had to contract that service. So we would have to pay mobilization and demobilization for contracted milling. The milling team would come into town, they'd do 6 or 7 different projects, get them all milled up, and then we'd have to go back and pave 6 or 7. People don't like it when their road is milled for multiple weeks on end without good asphalt on it. So now we're able to go from milling, paving, and it's been a great success. Our snow control and leafing efforts will also go unchanged. I have made some serious inquiries about having no snow this winter. I'll let you know how that goes. But we're still going to pre-treat before the winter weather hits. We're still going to continue to treat once it arrives, and we won't go home until the roadways are clear for the traveling public. Our sidewalk maintenance efforts are going to continue in earnest. I've talked a lot about that already this evening. We're going to continue the participation program. We're going to continue the contracted program. We're going to continue updating all the ADA ramps before we do any paving projects. The concrete crew we have at the street department, Tony Carroll and his team, do tremendous work. If you drive down Leonard Springs Road near TAP anytime soon, they've done an amazing job of something that shouldn't have been our responsibility, but we took on because it was an issue for the neighbors. I'll leave it at that. Our urban forestry, traffic signs, and pavement marking goals, again, mostly go unchanged. Those are pretty set things that we do. Again, thanks for the TransMap, the dollars associated with the TransMap project. I'll do a little trivia here. Did you know that we have an exact inventory of the reflectivity levels for each of our 14,926 different street signs? So that speed limit sign or a stop sign has a retro reflectivity standard. It measures how bright it is at night when headlights hit it. With that TransMap project, we have that inventory. We know which signs need upgraded. We know which signs meet the standard. It's pretty geeky stuff, but pretty fun stuff for us public works folks. Street lights and traffic signals. Again, we're continuing to make investments here. Two things to note. By paying upfront with Duke Energy for the equipment costs for lights, you can do usually like a 10-year payoff on the equipment, or you can pay up front. If we pay up front, we save 40% over that 10 years in initial cost. We've switched how we've done that. We used to just pay everything off over 10 years. That 40% savings is going to continually be reinvested, and I think it's going to be a really good project, or a good way that we approach street lighting. Move on to some overall budget highlights. Here we're looking at 4 different funding sources. First up, we've got the Motor Vehicle Highway Fund. And if we have questions about how these funds are populated with dollars, I'll turn right to the controller. But the Motor Vehicle Highway Fund, the Category 3 increases are largely due to our communications contract. Last year, we replaced all of our two-way radios that were outdated, mostly not working, and now all of our staff members have access to those in-truck radios, which has been great for communications. We need to replace the roof at the street department. We've got a higher set rate with the fleet division this year, mainly because of the paver and the milling machine. Those are some highlights for Category 3. Category 4 is a major decrease, and this is capital expenditures. We purchased a lot of capital last year, and it doesn't look like the fund will be able to withhold that type of request again this year, but we will certainly monitor, and if we're able to. This is one of those funny state funds that I think it's an 18-month rolling. I'd let Jeff explain it. For our local road and streets, this is one of our smaller funding areas, but the main increase that we're expecting to see here is that we do expect energy rates to go up next year. I think Duke has a current request in front of the Utility Regulatory Commission. So trying to monitor for that, and then also try to lessen the number of backlogged citizen requests for new lighting. I wanted to mention one. We're doing, where are we funding the Walnut and College Corridor signalization? Is that LRS or is that MVH? Is it in here? Well, anyway, so part of our request, and I know it's in the budget memo, we're requesting about $80,000 for some cellular connectivity upgrades for the traffic signals in both the College and Walnut corridors. Those traffic signals are outdated technologies, and so we're looking to make a pretty major investment there to help the traffic management in those corridors. LRS. Oh, for our cumulative capital funds, the increase here can be, there it is. This is where we've got our request for the cellular connectivity of those traffic signals. I knew it was in there. And then we do also have the capital increase here is due to that 10,000 is just due to, we know the pavement marking contract is going to go up again. We're adding more bike lanes every year. We're adding more crosswalk, it goes up each year as well as the supply costs. So overall, it's a 4% decrease across the board of all funding sources here for a total request of $8.33 million. And I just want to thank you for your patience as I work through all those funding sources. As you can see, what we do is varied, and the funding source, the responsibilities are as varied as the funding sources.
That's time.
I'm done.
Perfect.
Questions from council members? Councilman Barallo?
Mr. Wason, I'd like to focus on leafing.
Okay.
And although the budget declined a bit, it's because there was a reduction in capital outlays of about $80,000, more or less. What was that reduction? I'm curious.
I'm sorry, which fund was that, council member?
If I'm reading this correctly, under leafing, there's a budget allocation, and 400 line is capital outlays.
When it's feeding back.
Yeah, I know.
Just back up some, yeah.
Fillings. So the capital outlays, line 400, has reduced, right?
The 800,000 here, roughly.
Gosh, I'm not looking at the same thing.
Sorry.
I have a table. Well, okay. I'll just cut to the chase.
Yeah.
I think leafing, when I think about things that we could cut in the budget, leafing is something that I find, not that I don't appreciate it, because I really do appreciate the work that goes into it. I guess what I'm getting at, if we had a concerted program to educate people to compost leaves instead of raking them to the curb, maybe we could cut that budget by half. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I looked back to see if the deputy mayor was still in the room before I made my comment here. It's certainly something I want to look at.
Is he a fan of leafing? Or
well, he's kind of gone back and forth over the years. He's still not back right now, so I'm going to just continue with this comment. We will have a lot of residents very upset if we stop our leafing program.
Oh, of course. I'm not suggesting we do. I'm suggesting that we, through an educational effort,
Sure.
aim to cut it by 5% per year and maybe get it down to half the number and save $400,000.
I will gladly continue to explore that and try to.
Maybe it's a fantasy, but I think that's something we could work on.
Councilmember Rallo, I am with the verge of making some members of the public a little angry with me. I would cut it tomorrow if I could. And the reason I would cut it, not only for those environmental impacts and how we can do better with composting, but it's the service that we probably provide the lowest level of customer satisfaction. And by that I mean, we can never control when the leaves fall. We can never control when the first snow comes. And we can never make the entire community happy if we start in their neighborhood. Because if we start in their neighborhood, they're going to think we're never coming back. And if their leaves haven't fallen yet, our call volume on leafing is probably, our call volume, I would place a bet that our call volume on leafing complaints outpaces potholes and snow combined. I know that's a big statement, but I bet you our call volume would for leafing complaints is higher than those two combined.
Well, all the more reason then to perhaps find an alternative.
I'm with you.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Councilman Piedmont-Smith?
I see that you have $24,000 earmarked for a new roof on the street building.
Yes.
Could you tell me what kind of roof will it have, be reflective? Will it have solar panels?
I don't mean this comment flippantly or this question flippantly. Have you been to the street department before, back there behind utilities?
It's been a long time since I've been there.
Yeah, so it's a very old, well, I'd let Joe describe this, but I'd be worried about the words he'd use. It's an old building, it's cinder block, it's not a great building, but it needs a new roof. It's small square footage overall, probably less than 8,000 square feet total. So, you know, yeah, so we'll look to use like a white roof or something that's energy efficient and such. Well, Mick's not back yet, so I'm going to say this one too. A dream in my 3 years as the Public Works Director now is that we're having conversations, but a Public Works Operations Center. Something most all communities have. It's a huge expenditure, but right now, I'm up here at City Hall with the small administrative staff. Joe and his team are down on South Henderson, Miller Drive area with Jason and the fleet team. Animal shelters down by sanitation all the way on South Walnut. I don't foresee the animal shelter ever moving, given that we just invested a couple $1 million, but if we could get sanitation, street, fleet, Public Works admin, the efficiencies I dream about are tremendous when it comes to an operations facility. So I'll just leave it at that, and I hope I'm not in trouble.
Thank you.
All the way down the other end, Councilmember Granger.
Thank you. So I've been looking up brine. I know salt is bad for the cars, but now I'm seeing that really brine is as well, because it's a
salt product.
It's a combination of salt and calcium and blah, 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 but I can't believe it. I'm very serious. There are articles on using cheese and molasses or pickled brine.
Or
beet juice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is there...
The cost and expense.
It is?
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's like, it's not a byproduct. You'd have to...
It's an exponential cost compared to brine. Salt is corrosive, but we also treat our community very, very well when it comes to snow control. And we were just talking about, so yesterday, street department staff, Monroe County Highway Department staff, and the local NDOT operations staff all met for the first time in a long time. It was the first time it had ever really happened where we all sat down together to talk about issues on the local level.
Ixnay on the Mick conversation, he just walked in the door.
But so we had a great meeting yesterday with those entities. I hope you don't need my resignation. We had a great meeting with those organizations yesterday, but so we got talking with the NDOT folks who use a lot of brine, and one of the things that stood out to me most, and Joe has said this to me before, we've really, in a way, spoiled the community. We don't go home until every main thoroughfare is down to pavement. And to do that with lesser products or anything else, it's tough. We've really trained the traveling public here that when they get up in the morning, if we have anything to do with it, the main thoroughfares are going to be to pavement. And so that cost with the salt product, I think last year we saw about a 12% increase. They had warned us previously that we were potentially looking up to a 25 or 30% increase on that Cargill green salt. We will still use that to an extent, but all of our pre-treatment efforts will go to brine, and as long as the snow's not accumulating, we'll continue to try to use that brine. It's corrosive, but it's also, if we went back to the days of putting a sand salt mixture down, I think we'd all hear about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Sturbaum.
Yeah, I won't use my brother's exact words, but he calls me and wants to know who times the lights at Twin Lakes as he commutes into town.
All right, so what I can tell you about the light at Twin Lakes is that one likes to go off cycle just with no warning. And if we don't catch it, luckily, and Joe probably hates this, I drive in on West 2nd every day. So I'm making calls rather often as well. That signal trips for some reason. We've replaced the detection twice now. We've increased, and apologies to the apartment residents, but I've said, increase the east-west, and the apartment residents wanting to turn left are just going to have to wait a couple more minutes.
Ben will be glad to hear that.
Yep.
And you mentioned the 100 worst sidewalks. How do people find out?
All that information's on the Be Clear website. So it is, I am no tech wizard, but it is super cool, the data on that site when it comes to the condition indexes of sidewalks and all that.
And have you noticed how weeds grow right next to the curb?
I hate them. We also
There's some
can't just
Patterson
spray
driveways
those.
that are about this tall.
We also can't just spray those, so.
Can't spray them?
No. So it's the manual process of trying to cut them down. That's where the Brighton B-Town folks have had a lot of success. If they're growing back in some of the areas they've already hit, but that's all part of that effort.
Maybe the brine will kill them. And then, like alley repair.
Yes.
In the west side, those little alleys that pretty much don't get ignored. How do people get the holes fixed in those little alleys?
We'll patch holes, we'll fill holes. What we have a hard time putting the resources to is like a full grade and resurface, or we just have so many requests that
A
come
lot
through
of them
for
are
that.
gravel.
They're not gravel?
A lot of them are gravel.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, but to
Like
grade
fill
the
a hole
gravel
in the
and.
gravel.
What's
Yeah.
that?
Oh, you mean grading out the gravel?
Grading, yeah, I mean, those are, I mean, we only have so much yeah, but certainly something we try to
I
get
got
when we
one
can.
more in my lightning round here. Let's see. Oh, yeah, the thing about threatening fines to citizens about their sidewalk stuff.
Yep.
How broad is that? I mean, I just heard it happening on a little street, but
We don't threaten the fine until they get the second or third letter. So we send a very nice letter up front saying, hey, we've noticed conditions of your sidewalk that you're responsible for are out of compliance, and we'd really like you to work with us on coming up with a plan for fixing that. Second one gets a little more, hey, we haven't heard back from you. There are possibilities that if we can't get some action in a period of time that's agreeable, we may have to issue a fine.
right.
Third one gets a little more, but I can tell you, well, we'll leave it at that.
Well, I asked about the grinder earlier because to a citizen, it's difficult to fix a little trip spot or expensive. With somebody with a grinder, it's pretty simple to.
Sure.
And I saw one of the people that had been cited, and a neighbor
Nobody's
did get
been
out.
cited.
Who had gotten the third letter. And the old lady got her neighbor to grind it down, and it, sad story, but we don't want to harass old ladies about their sidewalks.
I don't, but we also get a lot of complaints about sidewalk conditions that we're technically not responsible for repairing.
Right. But could they make a grant program maybe to get the
That's where the
grinder to come
participation
out?
program comes in, and I can tell you, we've made a few accommodations when it comes to low-income individuals that have no ability to participate.
Okay, I'm done, thanks.
Other questions from council members?
Down to 30 seconds. So.
Seeing none, we're ready to move to the public for comments on the traffic control and streets portion of the Public Works budget.
Hi, I'm Greg Alexander. I admit that was a huge presentation. A ton of work went into it, so I might have missed something, but it seems to me like there was no ask for staff or material, equipment to clear snow off the sidewalks or to clear vegetation off the sidewalks. And I've talked to Mr. Wason before about that, and he basically laughed in my face when I suggested that maybe we shouldn't be plowing the snow from the street directly onto the sidewalk. Every time it snows 6 inches in the street, there's 3 feet of snow on the sidewalk along 3rd Street. And that seems kind of academic, but people walk along 3rd Street because there's no alternative. You can walk on Bloomfield Road or you can walk on West 3rd Street. You got no choice if you're out on the west side. And so you're walking on 3rd Street and you got your choice between walking on 3 feet of snow or walking in the street on, what is that, Highway 43, 48. People go in 40 miles an hour. They don't have any respect for you. The lanes aren't as wide because of the snow. And so they just, it's lethal. It is literally lethal. People are dying out on West 3rd Street. Last year, somebody died out there. So, and I can't be too mad at Mr. Wason, though, because you guys still haven't passed a complete streets policy. So when you look at sidewalks as a neighborhood beautification project enforced through housing and neighborhood development, if you look at sidewalks as something that neighbors are supposed to maintain or that they're supposed to clear the snow off of or clear the weeds off of, that's formalized in city code. That's not Mr. Wason making a mistake about your priorities. That's your priorities expressed in legislation. So if that's your priority, I don't have anything to say to you that doesn't have 4 letters in it. So have a good one.
Other public comment? Seeing none, anyone in council want to make a final comment? Councilmember Rallo?
Yes, well, I think sidewalks are the responsibility of the homeowner. Could you just confirm that, Mr. Wason?
Yes, I think the research I've done leads me to, I can't remember if it was 1978, 76, or 72 city ordinance updates that moved the responsibility of sidewalk maintenance from the city to the adjacent property owners.
And what about in the case of the, say, on thoroughfares? Is that the same?
So any adjacent property owner would be responsible for the sidewalk. We do take responsibility for all side paths. The further you get on West 3rd, past Franklin is all state maintained, but that's, I don't know how it works in state code, quite honestly.
My comment was, I wanted to pick up again on the leafing topic now that Mr. Nyssen is in the chambers, which I think is a lot of money to spend on leafing, and this is not a reflection on the team that does the work. I think they do a marvelous job. I think that my experience in the last few years has been that it's been better than ever. I mean, I think that the attentiveness to getting them picked up and everything, I mean, it used to be years ago, it was problematic at times, and they would freeze and so forth. Maybe they still do, but in any case, I think it's done much more timely. And so it's not a reflection of that. It's just, is it necessary? And if we could cut that through education, about, say, by half, incrementally per year, we could be saving hundreds of thousands of dollars that might go for something, say, related to our climate change efforts. Anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Councilmember Granger, did you have a comment?
Thank you. Now that Mr. Renison is in the room, I just want to laud your efforts and the work, lovely work that your wonderful staff does.
I did not ask for a raise, I promise.
No, I mean, seriously, I do really appreciate everything that staff do. This is one of the most visible things in our city, and I think that this maintaining and improving our infrastructure with our streets and sidewalks and it's just really, really important. Yep. I do appreciate your efforts.
So, and I'll just thank you, and if any of you are ever interested in coming and sitting down and looking through all this data and how we do decision making, it is really cool stuff. Like I said, I'm not a tech wizard by any means, but we have some data sets that are truly amazing that help us in our decision making. We know, I don't have it right in front of me, we know exactly how many millions of dollars it would take to bring every roadway into a condition index of 80 plus. We know how much it would take for sidewalks. We know we have great data sets that we're allowed to make great decisions on, or make our decisions on. So thank you.
Other final comments, Councilmember Boland?
Several things. Not usually one to comment during budget week anymore, but first of all, it's rare to hear a stat that turns councilmember heads, but the calls for leafing outnumbering potholes and what else was it?
I think that I said that the number of complaints or calls we get about leafing would outnumber potholes and
snow removal. Yeah, that was head turning. It was a surprise to all of us. Councilmember Rallo's compost education idea, I think, should be a high priority for both the Innovation and Sustainability Directors, the Public Works Department, and the Mayor's Office, which they're part of.
So we have pushed out information year after year on composting, and here are all your options, but yes, we can increase our efforts.
I'm not criticizing it. I'm saying, I think it's a good idea.
Yep.
I'm shocked at how many people think of leafing that way. It's just a real disappointment to me about people who call about that. The idea of an operation control center or a public works center, I do think the time has come to start thinking about it. I wonder if there isn't an opportunity to, there are other departments who have thought about, expanding their footprint. I know it's a matter of time for the police department building, that while they've, managed there, it's the old municipal building. Anybody who ever spent time there knows that it's not an ideal building. So, I was very disappointed when I first took office to see that utilities had just built their new headquarters, and they did it kind of before what we would have done before the first UDO, and they set it back from the street. They've got parking in front of it. It was old school development, and we absolutely can and must do better than that. This is an opportunity to build a building that is, appropriate for a city and not a suburb. So I'm not in any rush on it, but I also think its time has come and we should be thinking about it. So I heartily endorse the idea. The two last things I would say is, first of all, this is the largest, Public Works as a whole has the largest budget in the city outside of utilities, which doesn't get its revenue from the general fund. They do ratepayers. So, this is the one why we give it most of the night on Thursdays. But I also believe that those who are so inclined to say prayers should be including Joe Van Deventer in more of them. I just can't even imagine his job, and I wish him luck. Finally, Mr. Alexander has been speaking very strongly lately about sidewalks, and I think he's right most of the time on them. But I think also that the budget hearing, at least the 2020 budget hearing, may uniquely be the wrong place to be complaining about them, because on Monday, the new draft of the UDO comes before the Plan Commission. We're going to begin a several-month odyssey to overhaul the UDO. He and anybody else who feels strongly about, say, the personal or the transfer of ownership of sidewalks to households needs to come and speak at the revision of the UDO, at Plan Commission and at Council. I do also question why snow gets piled up on sidewalks while we prioritize the shoveling of streets over sidewalks. In many cases, there are streets where the sidewalk is adjacent. My own home street, the sidewalk is adjacent to the street. You're going to see that. That doesn't make it right. I think that over the course of the next 10 to 20 years, we need to think differently about how snow gets moved so that it doesn't impede traffic. Walking is going up, biking is going up. You can see it in the numbers in the planning department. But by the time we're talking about the budget of this division of Public Works, it's not like, the only thing we can do as a council is cut the money to the budget. We want to increase money for, say, finding ways to prevent snow removal from going onto the sidewalk. I think if Mr. Alexander is concerned about code, well, the code's about to get revised for the first time in 13 years. So I think he should know where to go. I probably should phrase that differently. Thank you. I support this budget.
Other comments? Councilman Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I think we definitely need to get rid of the leafing program. It's just not sustainable. We spend $900,000 on this program where people could, given the right knowledge and tools, take care of the leaves on their own property and compost them and have good compost to use in their gardens. It defies logic that we still do this. So I think that this is the last year that we should do it. And during 2020, we should, along with the sustainability director and others, do the education campaign that Councilmember Rollo spoke about, and really inform people, of the carbon footprint of doing the leafing program and the many benefits to taking care of the leaves on one's own property. And in the end, people may be more happy with that because there are so many complaints with the leafing program anyway. I want to add one more problem to the list of problems of the leafing program, and that's what we heard with the solid waste district when we talked to the people who accept the leaves that are swept up and mulch them and turn them into compost, that the equipment that sucks up those leaves sucks up anything in its path. And so they get these, deliveries from the city that have, brooms and rakes and trash of all kinds. It's a big pain for them. So it's just, I think the time is at an end. This should be the last year we pay for leafing. And given the amount of money, we could think of what we could do for the sidewalks. And for the enforcement of sidewalk shoveling of snow. This is probably already being done, but I think it would be really important to, whenever the hand department goes out to enforce the shoveling of sidewalks, which is only done on a complaint basis, that's another issue. But they should go out with a list of volunteers that they could give people, because we know that not everybody can shovel their own sidewalk. So we should connect them up with a volunteer network and say, hey, call one of these people. They would volunteer to help you out. So anyway, overall, this is an essential part of city services, and I think we do a great job with Public Works staff, so I appreciate you all, and I will be supporting this budget. But if those leaves are in there next year, they're not going to get my approval. Thank you.
Other comments?
Recommend you pass.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Will the Deputy Clerk please call the roll?
Boland,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Sturbaum,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rollo,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Granger,
Yes.
Ruff,
Yes.
8-0.
Passes 8-0. Now we are ready for sanitation.
We have just now replaced our Director of Public Works, so I'll be finishing the presentation tonight. I can't leave him for 5 minutes, and two things are said that I needed to at least make a brief comment on. The administration is receptive to a change in the leafing program, so we do support the study and possible elimination of the way we're doing it today. So I just wanted you to know that we've had the conversation. We're not opposed to that at all. So thanks for your support for that as we look to the next year's budget. We also have plans for a long-term replacement of putting all of the Public Works Department under one roof. So that too is something we've considered, and it's not in any of the capital plans you see at the moment because it's beyond that time span. It doesn't fit in the PS Lit, so you won't see it there, but it is in our minds, and it's not that far off. There's another moving part to that that we'll talk about when it moves to a point where we can, but it is in our plans to replace their buildings, bring them all together under one roof, and get rid of some of our old inventory buildings that no longer are very viable. So I'll bet the rest of the staff's glad to hear that too, aren't you? Yeah. So anyway, just for the record, I wanted to say that I'm not leaving the room again for the rest of the night, especially with him at the microphone.
Mr. Wason, we have some researcher positions available at the council in case you want to apply.
I don't know if that would fit my skill set, but we'll see how tomorrow goes.
Ready to go with
This is a
sanitation.
10-minute budget with 8 minutes of questions.
Sanitation? All right. So I truly believe that our sanitation, I've said that a lot tonight, I truly believe, but it is because I do. I could talk about a lot of things I don't truly believe, but never mind. I truly believe that our sanitation modernization efforts in 2017 were not only the largest overhaul to a city service in the last several decades, but also one where the vast majority of residents have taken a liking to the ease and convenience of the new system. While it has had its challenges, many, it does win the award for being the leading topic where I receive praise for our public works efforts in the grocery store. I should probably flip through slides. That's one of my, Dan Ham, everybody. Dan that smile is on his face every day, and he's a wonderful human being. Where are we at? Slide 2. We collect solid waste, recycling, yard waste, large items, and appliances for the nearly 13,500 households under our service jurisdiction. We also collect from all city parks, all city-owned buildings, and in 2020, we'll begin collecting from the newly operational Switchyard Park, which my family and I are super excited about. The solid waste and recycling industry is ever-changing, and we're adapting as best we can, just like many other communities. We have 24 full-time employees at sanitation. Rhea Carter, our Director of Sanitation, and Denise Kinzer, our office manager, do tremendous work. The staff down there, the MEOs and the laborers, those guys are up every morning, out the door at the sanitation garage by 4:30, starting their routes in every weather condition imaginable. So I couldn't give any higher of kudos to some of our to staff members. 2019 is a year like any other for us. For the first time in the city's history, we have had to pay for the processing of our recyclables that we collect. We pay I don't have the number in front of me, but we're paying for the first time to have recycling processed. We still want people to properly recycle at the highest possible levels. That is absolutely our goal. But this is a new reality we had never faced before. I'll gladly continue to ask for additional dollars for recycling each year because that will mean the rate at which we divert from landfills will also be increasing. I mentioned some challenges when it came to sanitation modernization, and I want to be very upfront with one of those major challenges. Our original partnership for the necessary back office software did not work out. We've had to go with a new vendor here in 2019, and so we don't have all of the data sets we had hoped to have at this point. I won't go into much more detail there. If any of you have questions, I'd be happy to talk offline. Some quick updates on our 2019 goals. Many of our 2019 goals were reliant on that data. Those individual participation rates aren't currently available to us, but we are confident that the vendor we're moving forward with will be able to be a great long-term partner. In terms of recycling goals and our desired diversion rates, we're not quite where we want to be. We would like to be more in that 35 to 40% diversion rate. We're at 32 right now. The other thing I can tell you about with the modernization program when it comes to solid waste and recycling, our tonnages have gone up dramatically. I couldn't put a number on the number of households that used to not use our program, but I can tell you we've got a lot more using it now than we did previously. And it's not a bad thing. It's a system that's working well, and it's a system that trash and that recycling was going somewhere. We're just now taking it, and it's been a great program. A couple other things that we've been doing in 2019 and that will continue in 2020 is we're researching curbside composting. We've allowed a couple private partners to take that on with Green Camino and some others, and they've had some success, but it's something we're also still considering, as well as being part of the Renewable Energy Task Force discussions with CBU. For our 2020 goals for our recycling program, we want to hit that 40% rate. We are working with the communications folks in the mayor's office, as well as Lauren Travis and her team in sustainability, the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District, to work on educational components and programs to help people understand what's recyclable, how clean it needs to be, where it goes when it's recycled, and all of that to increase our efforts. Recycling. Some of our overall budget increases are related to a few key areas. Our increase in Category 3 of $101,000 is associated with when the street department got new radios, we also got functioning radios at the sanitation department for the first time in 7 years. There's an annual cost with that contract. Our set rate with the fleet division has increased. Those new trucks are a bit more, they're a bit more expensive to maintain. I'm not even going to look at Jason for what he's going to say, but those trucks they have many more components, whether it's the sidearm and the hydraulic mechanisms that they have. So those routine and preventative maintenance costs are higher, hence the increase in our set rate with the fleet maintenance department. Wait, it's getting late. And then at the very bottom there, you see our new recycle fees. Our current projections for our expenses in 2019 to process recyclables collected in our curbside program is at about $110,000. We did not know that last budget season, so we're trying to absorb some costs and do so within the current rate structures. We're forecasting that it's going to be closer to $140,000 or $160,000 for next year. So these are major increases in our processing costs, but again, wouldn't have it any other way. We don't want to do away with our recycling program or anything like that. Overall, the sanitation budget is about a 4% increase overall for a total of $4.36 million. And while our 2020 budget request reflects a changing and challenging industry, our modernization efforts in the recent past are making significant improvements to the overall success of the division. Employee injuries are down and morale is up. Resident satisfaction with the new system is evident, and that's evident through the community survey that we've recently completed. If you look at the first one compared to the most recent community survey, sanitation has gone up in that in terms of community satisfaction. We've also had some unexpected challenges when we envisioned the new program. We didn't expect our solid waste tonnage collections to go up quite as high as they did. Again, we've got more participation than we used to under the old sticker program. We don't, and the thing about that is we don't have any good data points from the sticker program to say how many households were participating on a regular basis. We have some of that now, and we will have much better data going forward, but we're realizing that those tonnages and the cost to process them have gone up quite significantly. I'm super proud of those modernization efforts, and I'm super proud of the team down at sanitation. Those crew members and Rhea and her team do great work in all weather conditions, and just proud to know that they work in the Department of Public Works. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. And again, questions from council members. Councilmember Vogel?
Yeah, so I am looking for any data right now. You say, for example, that there's been a great increase in the number of people using the new modernized program. How much more?
As I've stated, we don't have that data. Our partnership with our software partner that we initially went with did not produce the results we wanted. I think you and I talked about that a couple months ago.
But that's not the question I'm asking, because you just asserted that the use of recycling has gone way up, significantly up. Yeah. Do you have even the remotely ballpark
Oh, yeah, so
figure?
the data that we're basing that on is the tonnage of solid waste collected.
Let's start with that.
Oh, Rhea, you sent that to me a little bit ago. Where did I put it? Let me pull up. I could have sworn. Okay, here we go. So January through December of 2016, 5,378 solid waste tons collected, and a cost of $235,000 to process. I can go through several of these right now, but
that's total tons of trash collected, or?
Yes, 5,378 tons of solid waste in 2016. 2017, it increased by about 300 tons to 5,683. And I can email you all this, Steve, and get you some good some data.
I just literally pulled up the sanitation data set. But one thing I'm surprised by is in a budget that's otherwise rife with details of percentages going up and numbers in other departments, the most basic stat of how many tons of trash picked up wasn't present in the slide. You didn't mention it, and why?
I've got the notes right here.
Okay.
I'm happy to provide them.
Yeah, please.
We're limited on time, and we're trying to provide a lot of information. We certainly have tonnage data over time that we can provide you for both recycling, for solid waste. We can provide you the costs each year that it took to process those. Literally, it's a time issue more than anything. But
could you at least tell us the percentage increase in tonnage collected? Is that a good? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now?
Yeah, if you have it.
Yeah. So 17, we were at 5,683 tons of solid waste. 2018, this is a huge jump, 6,771 tons that we collected under the new program. 2018 to date, 4,285, or 2019 to date, 4,285 tons. We are currently on schedule to be about 15% higher than even last year on our tonnages. So certainly, and I know we've got that information on the Be Clear website and things with the data sets, but I apologize. I suppose I could have done a better job including that in the...
Is the 2019 data somewhere in Be Clear, or is that still internal?
I don't know. Nate, are we updating that monthly, or is that... Yeah, we tend to do that on the annual at the end of the year with the whole Public Works fact sheet, getting that, but we could try to get some more up-to-date data.
Yeah, I would appreciate it if that were uploaded before, not just doing it annually. This is a big new change, and the trend is important. The fact that it's going up even more than last year, we're already predicting, that's very important. So, thank you.
Other questions?
Can I just, pardon me, can I add one more comment to that? You know, the other thing that we do know is we're collecting a lot more in tonnage for large item and appliances. A lot of that just used to get dumped wherever it would get dumped. With us picking it up for $10 an item and such. Rhea, do we keep tonnage specific to large items? We can't because they go in the, but I'm sure some of that tonnage increase is also related to the increase of large items.
We can't track large items separately?
Most of the time, they're in the same trucks as the solid waste collection.
Right, but I mean, can't we do a total tonnage minus accounted for tonnage, and the leftover must be the large items, right?
No, they go into the same truck. So many of the large items, unless it's an appliance, will go into the same truck that we're collecting
Just
solid
considered
waste.
tons of trash, but I mean, okay. All right, thank you.
What we can offer is a count over time. We're tracking how many large items we've been asked to pick up and such. So we could provide you some info on that.
Yeah, that's not in the data set from '04 to '18, so if you can add it along with the monthly.
Well, and from '04, previous to the new modernization efforts, I don't know that we'll have good data sets on what we used to collect.
No. I'm just saying, going forward, if we can separate out large items and make it part of a monthly or quarterly report even. We can't hear you, so, but yeah, I mean, you just account anything that adds to this data set, because that's not yet a column in this data. Thank you.
Can do.
Councilman Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I wanted to know what percentage of the expenditures for sanitation are covered by revenues collected from customers?
The average general fund contribution, let me step back a little bit. We always, as a part of the appropriation, there's a department line in the general fund. That stayed steady at an appropriation of about $1.4 million per year. We only transfer to the actual sanitation fund where they get paid out of what they actually need net at the end of the year. That's averaged about $1 million a year over the last 3 years. We anticipate it being about $1.2 million in 2020, but again, it'll be based on an actual need at the end of that year.
Okay.
Can
you tell me what percentage of expenditures are covered by the revenues?
Yeah, hang on just a second. So their total budget is $2.8 million. So of that, about $1 million will be funded from the general fund. So a little under, about a third.
So when customers complain about how much they have to pay for sanitation, we can remind them that we actually subsidize
we
two-thirds.
certainly do.
Yes.
We do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilman Rallo.
Thank you. Mr. Wason, I have a modest proposal. It's modest because I think it could be established by a pilot program.
Okay.
We were talking about leafing earlier and the need for composting. It seems like in the sanitation budget, that's been recognized too. Green Camino is going around picking up compost, for instance, although that's very kind of carbon intensive for someone to go around picking up 5-gallon buckets. Although I appreciate their efforts, the best thing, it seems to me, would be composting on site. So my proposal is that we purchase a number of composters, the good quality that are sealable on top. We might have to volunteer some staff time to assist people in setting them up. I mean, it's ideal if you put some kind of mesh below it so that vermin can't get up under it, just like you want it sealed on top. The leaves provide the carbon for it. The food, organic waste, is about 40% of our waste stream, as I understand, by weight, which is expensive, right?
Sure.
To pay for. And if it goes into the landfill, it's producing methane, which is 20 times more potent as a greenhouse gas. So all this seems to me to kind of argue that we would be wise to invest in an effort to steer this waste stream and the leaf pickup into home composting through an educational effort and a pilot program. Does that sound, I'll turn it into a question now. How do you feel about that modest proposal?
We've done that in the past. It's been a few years, but we've done partnerships with the Earth Machine Corporation. I still have my Earth Machine from when we purchased under that program. It's been several years, something we could explore pretty quickly. One thing to mention for those listening at home and otherwise, we do offer our yard waste containers now. So instead of doing bundles and brown bags, we sell yard waste containers. So we had an extra inventory of the carts. We've sold green lids for those. You can purchase those by calling sanitation at 349-3443. We'd love to sell a bunch of them. But that's where, so that's where the yard waste can go. We cannot do food waste in there yet, but we're looking at alternatives there as well. But we certainly could work with Earth Machine again on a partnership. I don't think it would be one where we would be purchasing these. It would be up to the residents to purchase at a discount rate, but certainly something we could work with Lauren and her team on right away.
I think it would save us money if we invested in, I think these things retail for about $100.
Yeah.
And we could probably get...
I think the last time we did the partnership, we got them down to by the quantity to about 85.
Anyway, I think it's worth exploring, but while we're on the topic, where does that yard waste go? It doesn't go to landfill, does it?
No, it does not. We use a composting facility here in town that's approved by the Department of Environmental Management.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Volan?
Yeah, I have another question. Do we have a number of carts in use?
Yes, 13,000. We're 13,500, fluctuates 50, 60 here per month.
Now, these are pairs of carts or
Yes.
individual
They're
carts?
Households.
13. So households. So, and each household has a pair?
Yes,
I
and
mean,
some could
automatically.
have more.
What's that?
Some have more. So we've got some that have requested multiple carts for trash or multiple for recycling or have bought a couple yard waste, so.
Is some like 1% or 5% or 10, like how many households have more?
Oh, I'd say it's just less than 5% for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a number of carts out there or households. We can divide that into the amount revenue for monthly cart rentals. We know what the average cart is, the waste cart someone is paying for. We have a sense of the average number of gallons people are putting out every week, or at least how many carts they have, right? Mm-hmm. Can we have the number of carts added to this data set going forward as well, 2019? Because it's not in the, it wasn't contemplated before 2018 in this chart, and it's not in the chart that's on Be Clear.
I think I understand what you're going at. Can we talk afterwards?
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like, this is another data point that will need to be added eventually. We should know how many carts there are.
And this is where that with our previous software partner, we would have had all of this readily available had that worked, had we achieved our goals with that partner. They weren't achieved, but that would all be part of those data sets for sure. We've got a new partner that we're bringing on here really soon. They're the industry leader. They're a bit more expensive, but they're going to provide us some of the best data sets on this we could ever hope for. I've visited two communities that are using that one. We've had our team go visit Grand Rapids that are using that software program. We're very excited about it. It's a bit more expensive, but it's going to be highly reliable. It will provide a customer service portal that is second to none. It will allow our drivers to snap a picture every time that a cart's overflowing and we don't pick it up. It's pretty robust. I'd love to sit down with you and show you what we're looking at.
I'm very much looking forward to it. One last question. What is the current price for the medium tier of carts? Is it roughly to the nearest dollar? Is it 12, 13?
1052. For the
10.52.
middle. And if you recall, Council, when you established those rates, you established a range.
A range, right.
And we're in the middle, lower third of the range, I think.
Yeah, I'm getting a figure of $9.38 per cart if you divide 13,500 into the 1.5.
I lost you there, but.
Well,
I lost what you were saying there.
Oh, 1.5 million in revenue in 2018 divided by 13,500 households gives a roughly $9.38 per month
On
is the
average.
average household, at least with this rough data.
Yeah, and then we have the 3 different tiers of cart sizes, the 35, the 64, and the 92.
So we're somewhere between the
96.
small and the medium right
Small,
now. The average
medium, large,
household
yeah.
is somewhere between the small and the medium. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Other questions? Councilmember Piedmont Smith?
Yes, I noticed in the actual budget sheet that you have nothing at all budgeted for overtime. Last year, you had 70,000, and now it's 0. Could you explain why that is?
I'm sure hoping the controller didn't zero that out.
Personally,
We're certainly going to need to look at that one. Thank you.
So you'll get back to us about
Yes,
that?
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Rallo?
Mr. Wason, I have a question about, since we have seemingly a success story with the standardized sanitation, the containers, the new trucks and so forth, one of the benefits anticipated was a reduction in claims for injuries.
Yes.
Could you talk about that?
Yeah, we certainly have seen that. I don't have the exact data numbers in front of us, but we will provide you, as part of our follow-up, the exact numbers and reductions of injuries. It's certainly been, we've certainly seen a reduction. There's still, minor nicks and different things that occur. It's still one of the more dangerous, it's still, even with the automation, it's still one of the more dangerous positions within the city. But the number of back injuries have gone down, the number of shoulder injuries have gone down. They still occur from time to time. Sometimes our drivers will get out and try to move one of the biggest 96 gallons and they don't realize it's full of dirt, which you cannot do, by the way. But, some of those injuries still occur, but they have definitely been reduced, and we can get you those exact numbers.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, anyone from the public like to comment? Seeing no public comment, final comments from council members?
Yeah.
Councilmember Vola?
Look, it's clear that this has been a sore point for me for a long time. In many cases, budgets have been presented this week where a department head will excruciatingly read every digit of their $9,375,286 budget when they could just say $9.3 million. We've had, details in budgets that are very small, but in this budget, there's some details that are missing. The reason I'm not going to vote no on this budget is because I recognize how difficult the challenge has been. I understand when a software company fails, and I don't blame sanitation for that. But there's hard data that could already have told us how this program is going, and that I was only able to get tonight by asking for it. And I feel like this is one department where there needs to be more attention paid to providing more data. At least the basics that I asked for tonight should have been in the budget. Again, I don't blame Mr. Wason for, because he has to present 8 budgets every year. So it's a hard job there as well. But I wish sanitation would not be afraid of, publishing data at the very least, the most basic data. And again, I grant there may be an oversight. There's a lot of work to do. But I think Mr. Wason knows how I feel about it, and I'm definitely eager to sit down with him and talk more about data. The program seems to be going well, and I frankly think that the data would show that it's going well. So, I don't think we should be afraid of having more data available.
The word afraid is strong. We're not afraid to provide it.
Yeah. I think probably most council members would share the sentiment that you're not afraid to publish data. So other comments on sanitation? Councilmember Piedmont Smith?
I think we should try to get TerraCycle to open a location here in Bloomington.
I'm sorry?
TerraCycle. It's the business out of Trenton, New Jersey that recycles everything and takes plastic and turns it into things that people can use.
If I could make
And that's a huge problem right now, that China doesn't want our recyclables, and they're just stockpiling, and of course, we have to pay Republic Services to take them, et cetera, et cetera. So I just a call out to the economic development folks. Let's try to get a business that will actually recycle them and have it come here and employ people.
A very quick follow-up to that comment is a dream of mine would be that localized use of recycled commodities. I think one of the things the Kessler report for the countywide showed us is that it's not necessarily economically viable without getting commercial and a large county. I think it was a 6-county area and such. So, but yes, if I could ever in my career get a glass fault road, it would be a day that I'd very much celebrate.
All right. With that, we are ready for facilities.
Sure, sorry, we didn't
Do pass.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Sims.
Yes.
Sturbaum. Sandberg.
Yes.
Rallo.
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Granger.
Yes.
Ruff.
Yes.
Volin.
Pass.
701. Ready for facilities now,
This
please.
is a 15-minute presentation with 12 minutes of comment or of question time.
So are we doing, I apologize, are we doing facilities maintenance separate from parking facilities, or do you want me to do both combined?
It says includes parking facilities fund. Is it separate?
I've got two separate, I do have two separate presentations for these because the parking facilities and parking's become such a separate operation. But I'll run through both PowerPoints within the allotted 15 minutes if I can, I think I can.
And just a quick note, Public Works Facilities is budgeted out of the general fund. Parking, garages and lots are budgeted out of their own fund.
If I may ask, Mr. Chair, would you prefer to answer questions separately on them, or?
I think I mean, personally, yes, I would rather answer questions on facility maintenance and then questions on parking facilities. And I think within the 15 minutes, I can do each of them in 7.5, no problem.
Okay.
Fair enough? Excellent. Don't start yet.
It's an 8-minute clock. I'll give you 30 seconds. There you go.
There we go. All right. Facilities maintenance. The Facilities Maintenance Division is another division of Public Works that's undergoing modernization and increased asset management efforts. The small team of staff responsible for sustaining the quality and functionality of the city's buildings, as well as helping to keep the downtown clean. Overall, Facilities is responsible for 16 non-parks and non-utilities city-owned buildings, including our fire stations, police station, and city hall. They also maintain 3 redevelopment commission-owned buildings and work very closely with staff on our parking garages and our parking lots, as well as having 1 staff member dedicated to the cleanliness of the downtown. We're proud of our energy efficiency efforts. We're proud of our solar panel installation efforts. Since inception, the solar panels on Public Works facilities alone have created 1,353 megawatts of power since installed. That's 748 tons of CO2 not produced, and it removed as much CO2 as planting 7,751 trees. We've been busy, and we're proud of our efforts when it comes to the Brighton B-Town project. We're proud of our efforts improving the living conditions at our fire stations, and again, working on energy efficiency upgrades at all of our buildings. One area of focus for 2020 beyond building maintenance will be to establish fund lines for training, professional development, and travel that has not been funded in this division in the past. Some quick updates for our 2019 budget goals. This is all asset management based again. J.D. Boroff and his team have done a tremendous job of utilizing another module within the Lucity Asset Management platform to create overall condition indexes for each of our buildings. So just like we have for pavement, we have for buildings now. We're finishing up some engineering studies on, I think, are we finished with the roofs? Yeah, we still have to do condition indexing for our roofs, but the efforts he and his team are undertaking have been tremendous, and they will be just as helpful in our long-term capital decision-making as the other asset management efforts. Oh, yeah, so, here's a whole list of some of the things that we've been working on, here was a whole list of things we were working on in 2019, including lots of work at our fire stations and things. We're going to need to continue on all of our fire stations. Our 2020 goals are to use that condition index and come up with and complete our long-range capital maintenance plan for each facility. This will be a 5, 10, 15, and 20-year plan. We're continuing to, our request for 2020 continues to implement HVAC equipment replacement at City Hall, and also for funds to replace the original and aging cooling tower servicing City Hall. Staff's also working with, facility staff is also working with our animal care and control staff on a few more investments down there, as I mentioned in the animal care and control budget. And then we're increasing our training efforts and our professional development. We'll be undertaking facilities management training, but also updating our OSHA certifications for all staff members and facilities. There we go. A few categorical budget highlights include an overall decrease in Category 3. If you see there in line 365, we did propose for 2019 a storage facility and capital project for facility staff. We are not moving forward with that project given all of our conversations about facility needs and want to make that a more long-term need. We also have something we'll be talking to the council about here pretty soon with a project at the Morton Street parking garage that's going to utilize some of those $325,000 of funds, but we'll be coming back to that here in the next few weeks. The other major Category 3 increases, again, travel and educational opportunities and the HVAC systems that we've spoke about. For capital outlays, Category 4, that $250,000 is directly related to the cooling tower here at City Hall. And then we've also, in our condition index studies, realized it's time to tuck point and do masonry repairs on this 1998 refurbished facility, or well, 100-year-old facility refurbished in 1998. So that's about $125,000 per project there on those Category 4 expenditures. Overall, it's for the facilities maintenance division alone, it's a 3% increase in our budget request for a total of $1.192 million. That reflects our priorities to sustain and maintain the buildings necessary for the overall operation of city government. I'd be happy to take questions on this portion of facilities budgets.
All right, ready for questions. Councilmember Granger.
I'm curious about graffiti removal.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I had a note in here, but I was trying to speed things up a little. So we, in the facilities division, do graffiti removal only on buildings we own and property we own. And we do, and we are successful whenever we see that. We're usually within 24 hours, but we have an absolute limit of no more than 3 days before we get that off.
But the amount you're requesting has gone down? Are you seeing?
We're seeing less, and it's just, well, it's on our buildings. We're seeing a little bit.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. Mr. Wason, with regard to fire stations, you mentioned the overall condition index in the 2019 engineering report.
Yep.
Can you talk about that a little bit? And also, is that part of this budget, the facilities maintenance division, is that part of their capital outlay? Or is that?
Yes, if you look at the 10-year plan, and the chief talked about that extensively and was a major part of that. Facilities participated in getting that handled. But all those dollars will come out of the PS Lit. There's $200,000 for the most immediate repairs needed in those stations. That buys us time to look at the long-term plan. If you look at the far right-hand column on the PS Lit, you'll see there's a number of projects listed for the fire department that weren't there before. for us to identify how we're going to fund all those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Controller Underwood.
Other questions from council members? Seeing no further questions, would anyone from the public like to comment? Seeing no public comment, final comments from council members. Councilmember Sturbaum?
Yeah, just nice job on the Brighton B-Town.
It's a team effort.
Yeah, looks good.
Other comments? Oh, sorry, we didn't go to the public. Would anyone from the public like to comment? Seeing no public comment, any final comments from council members? Seeing none, will the deputy clerk please call the roll?
Recommend you pass.
Yeah, sorry.
Second.
Sturbaum,
Yes?
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rollo,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Granger. Ruff,
Yes?
Volin,
Yes.
Sims.
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Now, looks like we are ready for final summary comments.
No, we have the
Parking
you're right,
facilities
you're
real
right.
quick, yep.
You're right, sorry.
By my count, Councilmember Bolin, I have 9 minutes and 41
Yes.
seconds.
Go for it. Give you extra bonus 15 seconds.
All right. Parking, actually in that, I did thank JD. I wanted to make sure I got my thanks to JD in for facilities, but I think I did. Parking Facilities Division is responsible for the operations of currently 2 structures, parking structures operating on Walnut Street and Morton Street, with an average of 13,000 permitted and transient users per month. The good thing about parking structures in Bloomington over the last 12 months is that there have been no major issues, debates, closures of important facilities, or anything like that. So it's been a really easy time for us. Obviously, I say that with some humor attached, as the amount of time, effort, and energy staff has spent on the decision of whether to repair or replace the 4th Street garage, and now working towards construction of both a new 4th Street and Trades District garage, has been a tremendous lift. Thanks to Michelle Wall, our recent hire as a parking services director. Oh, I should probably get there we go. Sorry. It's my last one. I'm a little. Anyway, we've recently brought on Michelle Wall as our parking services director, and Ryan Daly has been with us for some time as our parking garage manager. They are both true professionals, and I highlight this, they are experts in this field. We are lucky to have both of them. One thing that was loud and clear in the 2018 and early 2019 discussions about our parking facilities is that we needed to have a plan based on best management practices to maintain our facilities to realize the full useful life of each structure. That was loud and clear to us. It's been loud and clear to Ryan for a lot of years without me truly recognizing, but I'm proud to report that over the last several years, that's how we've operated. We have been making repairs, we have been investing in those existing facilities, and whether it's truly visible to the layman or the person walking by, we have been making major investments. Great example is the southeast stairwell at the Walnut Street garage that we're replacing this fall. It's been exposed to the weather since it's been built. The concrete's falling apart, the metal's rusting, and we're replacing that. It's a huge expenditure. It requires a variance from the Department of Homeland Security. It's going to be it's a big expenditure, but we are making those investments, and we will continue to do so with all of our parking facilities. A few 2019 goal updates. We're operating where we want to be. We're over 85% capacity during peak hours. We've invested in the aesthetics and both art projects and wayfinding signage. And one of the big things, and this year alone, we've spent almost $90,000 on elevator repairs and elevator upgrades. If I didn't ever have to maintain another elevator, I would not if I didn't have to. They are expensive. They are hard to get good quality people to work on them. There's a lot going on with elevators, but we are making major investments, and the elevator investments are just part of it. As previously mentioned, we've been hard at work with the team planning and designing the recently approved new structures at both 4th and Walnut and in the Trades District. We spend probably a combined 12 to 14, if not 20 hours a week amongst our staff just on those two topics. And they're very worthwhile. Our 2020 budget goals are not recreating the wheel in any way. We're hopeful to have the new facilities up and running towards the end of next year, as well as we want to continue operating at high occupancy rates for the structures still up and running. We'll be participating in the creation of the annual report to the Parking Commission, which Michelle, Ryan, and all of our various folks that touch parking will be working together on, including planning and transportation staff. And then, and sticking with that theme of maintenance based on best management practices, we'll be in 2020 completing structural repairs at the Walnut Street Garage based on CE Solutions 2018 structural engineering report. That will repair the elevated decks. It will have beam and column repairs. The precast panels and retaining walls will be repaired. And after each level is complete, a surface coating would be applied to prevent water infiltration and concrete deterioration. That's all for the Walnut Street Garage. We did much of that at the Morton Street Garage just this past year in 2019. And then we will also be completing a major elevator cab upgrade at Walnut Street in 2020. A few categorical highlights for the budget request. Category 2 has an increase of just over $38,000 for the installation of new wayfinding signage at the Walnut Street Garage. That was a 2019 budgeted expense, but the cost of that stairwell replacement has gone higher than engineers' estimates, and so we've had to move some funding, so we are going to be trying to do that at the Walnut Street Garage in 2020. The Category 3 increase of just over $200,000 is attributed to purchasing some new parking communication equipment, as well as an increase in the supply and services line related to implementing the capital maintenance plans we've been talking about. And this also includes green cleaning supplies and a lot of our sustainability efforts that come with the whole Park Smart program. Overall, the 2020 parking facilities budget is about a 13% increase request and a total request of $2.397 million. While it's not been a topic without controversy, the operations and maintenance of the city-owned parking facilities is a responsibility with community-wide impacts. We're doing our best and will continue to do so into the future. Many thanks for your time this evening, and I know this is the last part of my presentation, so I just want to reiterate a few things that we talk a lot about. We are always going to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar through wise investments in infrastructure and wise uses of those dollars. We are going to take new approaches to service delivery and sustainability through our modernization efforts. We are modernizing a lot of what we do in Public Works over these last few years, and those efforts those are going to be huge efforts. And we're increasing and improving our overall efforts regarding asset management and capital planning. That cannot be understated. Those efforts are huge, they're time-consuming, and they are so important. And then we're investing in our people. One thing that I'm fully on board with, and amongst many other things, but with Mayor Hamilton, is his wanting to invest in our people. Professional development and investing in our people is only going to give us a higher quality of service delivery. These folks are some of the most talented, amazing, awesome people I've ever worked with in my life. I kind of get like my mom sometimes, where I can tear up without. Anyway, these are awesome people, and they work their butts off on behalf of the community, and I am ever so proud to work with them. So thank you for your time tonight. I'll answer any questions I can.
Thank you, Mr. Wason. Questions from council members? Councilman Piedmont Smith.
Yes, can we go back to Category 2, where you have the $50,000 increase? I know it's more than the wayfinding signage, it's various repairs, but I'm surprised that it would be such a big increase when we have, we will not have the 4th Street Garage or the Trades District Garage online in 2020, probably not until the very end of the year. So this is just for 2 garages? Why is there such a big increase?
Well, the wayfinding project alone is over $100,000, right? It's $50,000 alone. Just the signage is $50,000. So there's that increase for the signage, but then also all those other operating and maintenance expenses. Even with, I think, Ryan, jump up here if I start saying this wrong, but I think I understand where you're going. We're operating one less facility than we were last year. Why would there be an increase? I can honestly say, in my opinion, and Ryan, if I'm wrong here, it's making those additional investments to make sure we are meeting those best management practices for operations so that we do get that full useful life. When I talked about just what we're going to do at Walnut Street alone last year, or next year, in terms of, where's that list? You know, the deck repairs, the beam and column repairs, the precast panels and retaining wall repairs. A lot of those supplies and that maintenance is part of those Category 2 expenditures.
But the wayfinding signs alone are $50,000?
So if you think
are they made of gold or what?
No, if you think, so every space is numbered. So just off the top, how many spaces does Walnut have? 353 spaces. So you're going to have 353 signs, 1 through 353. You're going to have every arrow board. They're color signs. They're color-coded by level. It's expensive. If I had to ask city staff just to do that in-house, it would be a major undertaking.
So all the signs on each parking space need to be replaced?
It's all part of an ongoing, yeah, absolutely. It's every 6-7 years. Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Well, you guys are the experts.
I truly believe they are experts.
All right. Thank you.
Amongst many other things I truly.
Seeing none? Any?
I actually have nothing.
Oh, sorry.
Nobody else. I also had a question on Category 4. In the memo, it says there's an increase of $10,000 for T2 online permits split with other funding lines per controller's office.
Yes. I should
What does that mean?
Yeah, so I should have highlighted that, but again, I was a little bit worried about time. This is to... it's so simple. We should sell parking permits online. You should come hang out at City Hall during the day this week because we get hundreds of students coming through and there's stacks and stacks. Michelle's office has stacks of dual copy paper, and it will be amazing when we can start selling permits online, and that's all part of that effort. I should have highlighted that. I can't believe I didn't. It's only, yeah, that's only 1/3 of the total cost to implement the project. It's a big lift.
But it'll be implemented in 2020?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
I don't even have to sell those permits, and I'm tickled.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone from the public like to comment on the parking facilities part of the budget presentation? Seeing none, final comments from council members on this parking facilities portion, and then we'll have an opportunity to comment on the overall budget presentation so far. Councilmember Granger?
Thank you. I can't find it right now, but I think somewhere in what I was reading the budget that you are trying to do green maintenance supplies, cleaning. Sorry, I can't find it right now, but I just wanted to say I appreciate that effort. It's the small things, but I think that's very important, so thank you.
Councilmember Sims, did you have your hand out a minute ago? No. Councilmember Voland?
I dished out criticism in a previous portion of this budget. I want to lay out some praise in this one. I just cannot emphasize how important the increase in this budget is to our long-term interests cost-wise. Two generations of city leadership failed to maintain the 4th Street garage, and there's a reason that we're having to replace it now. This kind of investment is what was always needed, what will definitely be needed, what needs to be taken into account whenever we think about the long-term costs of new garages. So I mean, I'm delighted to see that we're spending more money in this particular budget because, I mean, it's the only responsible way to own parking garages. So, you know, thank you to the administration, to the Public Works Department for making this investment. And this is perhaps one of the best indications of, you know, overall administrative foresight that we're doing. This, if anyone asks me, what is the Hamilton administration doing that's forward-thinking, give me a specific example, this is the first thing I'd point to. So I can't say enough about it, good about it, and I'm glad that whatever it takes to make sure those garages are maintained, we need to be spending money on it. Thank you.
Councilmember Sandberg?
I want to express my gratitude for being a part of the planning, to sit in on all the design discussions for both 4th Street and the Trades Garage. Very enlightening. That was such an ambitious task that everybody on that team had in front of them with everything that was anticipated and expected for the garage. And listening to the thoughtful conversations, how questions were asked and problems were solved, that again was very enlightening to be in on that ground stage. These are not easy choices to be made when we're balancing the costs of everything with the quality that I think we all want with respect to maintaining our assets and keeping them online as long as we possibly can. So with this particular area, I'm using this opportunity to say thank you to everybody in Public Works, but this one in particular, I kind of enjoyed being in that kind of ground floor, watching it come together and come together with frugal decision-making and also the kind of garage that our downtown is going to need to maintain the vibrancy of our downtown. So thank you, Mr. Wason and crew.
Other final comments from council members? Seeing none, I'll call for recommendation.
Ready to pass.
Moved and seconded. Will the Deputy Clerk please call the roll?
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rollo,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Granger,
Yes.
Ruff,
Yes.
Volan,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Sturbaum.
Yes.
All right.
That passes 8-0. And before we move on to the final opportunity for comments, I think Councilmember Volan wanted to make a quick announcement.
Quick announcement, because there are 2 birthdays we're celebrating, Councilmember Ruff and our attorney, Mr. Sherman. There are thousands and thousands of calories sitting in the council library right now awaiting consumption. They're delicious, sugary calories, cupcakes from both Kroger and the Owlery, and plenty of other things. I invite everyone who's still in the room to please help us consume these in honor of their birthdays. Thank you. So if you've got a few minutes, we hope we won't talk too much so that we can all consume some calories. Thank you.
So to put that in more plain terms, you just all got invited to a birthday
Yes,
party.
everyone who's here, please, please relieve us of these sweets.
I am going to take this real quick opportunity to say thanks to Mr. Sherman. I've worked with him for many, many years on many different things. He told me he might retire next year, and I just want to say thanks for working as hard as you have for all these years, Dan. Thanks.
We are unlikely to be celebrating their birthdays next year, except in absentia, so. Yeah.
So at this point...
Would you indulge me for a closing comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
before you all make yours?
First, we'll go to...
As long as you promise to eat cupcakes, that's all I'm saying.
I have to promise to eat a cupcake? I can do that. Mick Renneisen, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to thank the council for modifying the way we went about this process over the last 4 nights. We certainly covered a whole significant amount of information in less time than we did last year, and I know that was a concerted effort on both the administration's part and the council's part to modify both our behaviors, and hopefully it's been sufficient to give you at least the first pass at the budget, a lot of answers to the questions and the amount of data that we've talked to you about over the course of the week. We know we'll get your questions from the council through Dan Sherman, and we'll be happy to answer however many of those are as quickly as we can in writing. But I also wanted to acknowledge the great work of our staff, our team. It's not just the department heads, and almost all of them have said this, but I just wanted you all to know that there are many people who touch the budget process in the city. It's just the department heads that you typically get to see and the department division heads that come with them on their given nights. But really, anyone who touches something in the city that has something to do with a service or a product that we deliver has some say at some level in how the budget is developed, because they're on the ground, they know what's going on, and they have to tell their supervisors and their department heads what they need. And so we really do build our budgets from the ground up. So thank you to all the staff, not just tonight, but everybody involved in delivering the services for the City of Bloomington residents. Budget development's about a 6-month process for us, and I know many hours are spent on your part before just the presentations that you absorb, and then after tonight, you'll dig deeper and look more thoroughly into the information we shared with you, which is your job and what we want you to do. Mayor Hamilton believes in transparency. We put all this online. It's been online since it was sent to you last week, and we hope that the city residents look at it deeply too and ask questions. We know everything we propose is not always exactly what our council members want to see or the public wants to see, but it's our job to do the best we can to represent all the myriad views of our residents, of the council, to do the best we can with the resources we have. And we all know that as much as there are a lot of resources available to us, it's never enough to do everything we'd all like to do. So again, just wanted to thank you for your consideration and your thoughtfulness about the approach to the budget, and we look forward to hearing your comments, and then we'll see you again in about a month, I think, as we take the next round of budget reviews. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So now that we're concluding 4 evenings of budget discussions, we're going to give council members an opportunity to say a final summary comment. We're going to start on my far left with Councilmember Granger. This way.
Thank you. I do appreciate all the efforts that that city staff put into pulling together, creating this budget. I do, and I appreciate Mr. Renaisen noting that we don't always get what we want, but I think with some soft massaging, we might be able to get a little bit more that would benefit the community in a sustainable way. And I do look forward to working with my colleagues and the administration in thinking about ways that we might make some changes that won't hurt people but will benefit us all more. But anyway, thank you for all the work that you always put into this. Grandpa.
I think we might as well work our way this way.
Sure. Thank
Councilmember
you.
Sandberg?
Again, I agree with Councilmember Granger that there are probably some areas for some tweaking. I spend a lot of time up here just listening. During this first round, we do have an opportunity to ask questions in more succinct and maybe direct fashion in writing, which I will be doing beyond this. I was kind of joking with Adam Wason about the many things that I hear from constituents often when I go to Kroger. You can't go out in the public without hearing a lot from people, and I kind of was joking that my ice cream often is melting before I can get, back home with it because of the people who stop me. And what I get a lot from people, not just at Kroger's, but everywhere I go, are concerns over public safety, concerns over neighborhood safety, more break-ins perhaps in their areas, wanting more street lights because of darkened neighborhood areas. I listen very carefully to what people tell me, and I think for my purposes, I will be looking probably a little more hard at the BPD budget in thinking about, the increased demands for our sworn officers and how we might do a little better, making sure we have adequate members of that police force. All in all, I'm very pleased with the budget. I am a strong supporter of arts and culture in this community, as not as an elite of luxury, but as something that is very part of the fabric of this community. So I will always be a strong supporter of the arts, in addition to social services. Our strong support for nonprofit organizations that do so much to help our underserved and low-income clients. So, thanks.
Councilmember Sturbaum?
Yeah, I, along with the rest of us, appreciate the brevity and yet the competency of expressing what happens in every office of the city. And sitting through 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours of this really gives a perspective that I'm reminded of every year. How much is done? How much is done that nobody knows is going on? How much work is happening just to keep the city going? The things everyone takes for granted for it's a big job, and everyone's pulling their weight, and I'm really impressed. I don't have a particular complaint about the budget. It's not perfect in every way, but that's how the world is. But thank you.
Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. As many of you remember, I was caucused in August of 2017, and I am still a little upset with retired Councilor Tim Mayer because he just didn't explain all this to me. Everything that we do as council folks, he never told me all that. And I do say that in jest, and I am very appreciative for all his help and that of my colleagues. But I will echo the Deputy Mayor's comments on the budget process itself, program budgeting, if you will. And I appreciate the city administration, the staff, and my colleagues for all their efforts. It's pretty clear what is proposed is an overall increase, and there's been multiple decreases in budget lines in certain departments. There is an overall proposed increase. This is tough. I mean, one of the terms we've used is prioritize. We've all heard this, and I'll miss some things, but many of us have suggested more BPD officers. Some have suggested increased park security, maybe even putting law enforcement there. We've talked a lot about climate change and some of the things that we would like to try to do or would wish to do. One of those being a direct environmental planner. We've talked about housing inventory, parking garage maintenance, sidewalks, quality of life issues, including arts, culture, and recreation, social service agencies. I was tonight hearing about the increased cost of recycling. So I just really want everyone to understand, if you hadn't got it yet, how thorough and in some cases exhaustive, but important this is for us. The other night I used the word balance. I don't know what word to use to describe some of the responses. I don't know, but I believe that there must be a balance and a prioritization in everything that we need here to enhance our city, our quality of life. I did not even mention in all that, because I'm not so sure we can put a cost on it, but it is definitely important. Social equity, social justice. What price do you put on feeling safe in this community and feeling respected? You see, those are the things. So I just want to give my thoughts on that, and in particular, everyone that's listening and all my colleagues. This, again, is my third budget. I find it interesting. I truly do. But I just want you to know, and I do believe that every comment up here and all my colleagues, we will try to do exactly, in administration, what we think is best for the community, for the members of this city, and how we keep it moving forward. So thank you very much. We'll talk again later, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Volan?
Yeah, I mean, except for a couple of budget items, I don't want whatever critiques I made this week to take away from what is another excellent budget. Excellent that it's improving from year to year, like where the focuses are, and what complaints I have are resolvable. I do want to say about the process itself that we used to be lucky to sit through a 4-night budget week in less than 16 hours. This week has been cut to less than 12. It's easily a record. It's at least 2 hours shorter than the time we took last year to do budget week. I seem to recall in my first years on council when budgets were held over 5 or 6 nights over 2 weeks. I can't even imagine that now. But managing the time of the whole meeting of everyone in the meeting makes a difference. I think Mr. Reneisen and the administration, I thank them actually for working so proactively with us to optimize the duration of budget week. Council members in turn rarely needed to ask for more question time. Next year, I think that we need to actually put a limit on debate as well, on comments after the presentation. Although again, except for economic and sustainable development, sanitation, and to a lesser extent, traffic control, there was almost very little use of final comment. So congrats to everybody. I think also the policy of submitting questions in writing and expecting that questions will get answered, the administration expecting the questions to come, is a positive development for us as well. That it provides clarity as well as transparency. Thanks to everyone, and I'm looking forward to the final budget in September. Thank you.
Councilman Rallo?
Thank you. I'll hit on a few points. Overall, I'd say I'm pleased with this budget. I think various departments are doing wonderful things. I think they're very responsive to the needs of this community. I think this administration has been. Beginning with my first questions, anticipating that we're probably going into an economic downturn, I think that we do have healthy reserves. We can't anticipate the severity of that downturn, but I think two approaches. One is to have healthy reserves. The other is in economic good times to invest in infrastructure. And I think that this administration's been very attentive to capital investment in vehicles and in various facilities and also in infrastructure. So that gives me a great deal of peace of mind. Speaking about certain needs, I'm not convinced that we don't need to expand the sworn officers in our police force. Adding 2 officers, I think, is a very good thing. I want to make sure that it's commensurate, that it's in accord with population increase year on year. In terms of compensation for city employees, 2% is below what is the national cost of living increase of 2.8% for the last year. It was explained that we have generous benefits that compensate in many ways for that. I have a hard time determining, though, if housing costs are becoming so expensive that it might impact the ability for many of the 850 or so city employees to live in the city, and I would like them to, especially public safety employees. In terms of maintenance of basic infrastructure, I think it's, as I said, I think we're doing a very good job. Disappointed to hear about Kirkwood being delayed, various downtown streets. I think that they're in not a very good state of repair, but I look forward to those being addressed soon. I think every department seems serious about investing in quality of life, whether it's basic services, parks, economic development, and so forth, even efforts regarding challenges for biodiversity and bringing that into the city. I've been very impressed with downtown plantings, for instance. Completely, really a pleasant surprise. We talk quite a bit about climate change, and I think really one of the best ways to apply city resources is in public transit. I think Bloomington Transit has reached a point where they really can no longer expand, anticipating funding from state, maybe federal. And so I think it's incumbent on us to fill that gap. And we talked a bit about where to find the resources for that. But I think if we're serious about climate change, that's got to be one of the major priorities. Last time I checked, I think generally how our carbon emissions fall out, 30% are transportation, about 30% are as home heating, 30% is electricity use, and 10% is landfill emissions. So it seems to me we've got to hit every one of those every one of those sectors, but transit is particularly important, I think. So I'll leave on this, and that is that I think my colleague, Councilmember Piedmont Smith, made a very good suggestion, and I'll refer to that in a moment, but we need to make a concerted effort to commit to our climate change goals. It affects nearly every budget. Every department will have to be engaged in order to reduce emissions by 2.5% year on year. It will require an action plan, which I'm anticipating, looking forward to that. It has to address energy production, conservation, and sequestration. I think those are the 3 main efforts that we could work to reduce emissions. And referring back to Councilmember Piedmont Smith's idea, I like the idea that it should be the duty of a single individual. It just doesn't seem practical that every department could coordinate in sort of an ad hoc way to achieve that goal without there being somebody who is aware of our emissions, who is working in a concerted effort with every department, many of which could, coordinate their activities in order to achieve a reduction. So I think this administration should consider hiring such an individual or assigning that duty to an individual to make sure that we reach that point. And if in the future we have a budget meeting, we know the go-to person is that individual, she or he in the audience, who comes forward and says, here we are. Either we've achieved it or we haven't, or we've exceeded it. But in any case, that person is charged with that duty because it's that serious. Thank you.
Councilman Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I want to thank all the city staff who worked so hard, especially Mr. Underwood and his team on this budget proposal. It is a significant increase, 8.3%, but we are maintaining reserves above 33%, expected reserves of 35.8% at the end of next year. So we are still in good shape, and I think it's a wise budget and wise to keep those reserves. I spoke yesterday about the importance of prioritizing climate action and addressing the dire climate crisis that we face. Councilmember Rallo mentioned that we should have one person whose task it is to address these issues. We sort of do. I mean, we have the Assistant Director for Sustainability in the Economic and Sustainability Department and Sustainable Development Department, but that person is not a department head, does not have the clout that she needs to really focus our energies and have the authority to work with other department heads on changing the way we do things to be more sustainable. So I urge the administration to create its own department for climate action and sustainability. I think that is extremely important. If we don't see it for next year, then at least for the year following. Now, I want to clarify some misinformation that is out there on the internet about I saw a post this afternoon that said some members of Bloomington City Council are considering defunding the arts in next year's city budget in lieu of focusing on climate issues. That is absolutely not true. I believe that this individual was referring to comments that I made, and I was the only one who made them yesterday evening when I was talking about priorities in funding, and given our limited funds, that I would prioritize expending more money on addressing climate change, and I would prioritize that over things such as expanding funding for the arts or the golf course or beautiful statues at the entranceways to our city, because it's okay. Let me just state clearly: I'm not proposing to cut funding for the arts. I do think that in the long run, it is of a higher priority to address climate change, and so increased funding should be directed towards that goal. I'll just quote what I wrote in response to a concerned resident who contacted me today. I agree that funding for the arts and funding for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions are not mutually exclusive. Arts are very important for Bloomington and indeed for any community. I have no intention of cutting the arts budget in any significant way, but I think increases in funding should go to city programs that address climate change first. This must be our highest priority if we hope to mitigate climate catastrophe. And I stand by that statement. But I think there's been some exaggeration and some hyperbole online that I hope will be overcome. Thank you.
There's not much I would have left to add that hasn't already been said. I'm in agreement with most of the comments that have already been made by my council colleagues. But I will sort of echo my concern about the budget seeming not to have what I hoped in terms of a theme, a unifying, organizing, and planning theme of climate action that ran through every department and ran through the entire budget. You know, it was many, many months ago. It was early this year, I believe, when the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change came out with a announcement that was their strong feeling that dramatic action had to be taken within 10 to 12 years in order to avoid, you know, tremendous climate disaster, global climate disaster. So that does concern me a little bit overall, but you know, that's not a criticism of any of the work that the city's done, the staff has done, that department has done, that city frontline employees have done, that the budget in its presentation or in its content overall. So, but I did want to emphasize what's been said by a couple other council members about that idea of a larger theme of the urgency, seeing it somehow run through the overall and underlie the entire budget. The need for dramatic climate action to start where we can start it, and one place is in local government, where we have control that we don't have outside of government. So the other thing I want to say is that I don't believe for a second that Adam Wason or any city employee ever practically laughed in the face of a concerned citizen regarding a concern or issue that they had brought to the city, as was suggested by a member of the public tonight. And with that, since we have, do we take an overall vote?
Yes.
Councilmember Volin?
No, we don't. Oh, good.
But I do have a reminder about the unanswered questions when the time comes.
What?
Oh, tomorrow, we intend to get out the unanswered questions for you to look at. And like last year, I'm proposing that your deadline be the end of the day on Tuesday. Now, for some of you, that can be midnight, but others, maybe it's 5 p.m.
You need to submit questions that...
Yes, submit questions. So review the questions that we've compiled, make sure that we've got what you've stated, and add your own written questions. And the idea is that we can then turn these around to the administration by next Friday. That's why you'll see this 4-day turnaround for you. And so I hope that that's acceptable to you.
So our deadline for submitting questions is when? Tuesday. What time? Tuesday when?
Oh, midnight is fine Tuesday.
So Monday night, 11:59 p.m.?
No. Tuesday night at 11:59.
Okay.
So with that, do we need to take, Mr. Underwood.
Sorry, just to add a couple of comments for you. Just a reminder that there will be 2 more meetings of the council on the budget. One will be what is typically a committee of the whole, but actually functions as the public meeting for the budget. We will advertise that in Gateway, which is the way we officially have to advertise the budget. That goes out 10 days before that public hearing. And then secondly, you'll have the formal adoption. We then have to submit that to the DLGF, and they'll issue a budget order probably late in December. They're getting a little bit better about that. Secondly, just to remind both council and the public in general, this booklet that we put together and has been posted out on the website is a process that we've developed cooperatively between the administration and the council. What you will see in September and October is the official documents required by the state and the Department of Local Government Finance, and they look very different from this, but this book will translate very well into that. We have that populated, and as we make changes, we will do that. But just so everyone knows, the ordinance is actually on a fund-by-fund basis. there's backup documentation if there's multiple departments. But I did just want to remind everybody about that, that it will be a different look and feel come September than what we presented here.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Councilman Volin, you have something to add?
Just a question to Mr. Underwood. So if there's any changes the administration may make as a result of this week, that will happen between now and, I mean, this is your opportunity to adjust the budget based on anything that we might have said.
That's correct.
And so we should expect to review the budget. Will there be kind of a red line copy? What changes, if any, that you made to funds?
As in past years, I will always put together for you a chart. I will update my memo that has all the higher end details.
Changes from now to between now and then.
There will be a chart in there that by fund and what those changes are, increases or decreases.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
We're adjourned.